Thank you.
Bring your mic close.
Okay, we're gonna call the regional school committee to order at 6:32 p.m. I don't think we have to do roll call because we're in person, right?
Right, that's correct.
Irv?
I'm going to call the Union 26 to order.
And I will call the Pelham School Committee to order.
Okay. Irv, do you want to start with the
Right, let me
item?
just for public's sake, identify the Union 26 members, and when I call your name, please answer. Margaret? Tom?
Here.
William?
Here.
I think we're all present. So, what I...
And you're
And me, Irv Rhodes.
And Jim.
No, Jen
No,
is not.
not Jen.
No.
Okay.
We're all here. So, I want to welcome everyone to tonight. It's our first meeting officially of what I consider the school year after school has started. I would consider that to be so. We, this year and the rest of 2023 and for most of 2024, we will be involved in one of the more important tasks that a school committee can find itself, and that is selecting a new superintendent. That is a particular mighty task, and it is something that I believe that we're up to. It is because of the quirks in our system. Union 26 is the superintendency union. So that superintendency union is composed of members or officers from the Amherst School Committee and officers from the Pelham School Committee. Union 26, in combination with the Amherst School Committee and the Regional School Committee, are charged with conducting a search for a new superintendent. So having said that, what I would like to start off with is, if you who have received the material that I sent out, it was materials that were sent out after talking with MASC, and one of the reasons that I talked to them is that Glenn Kuchar and I go back so far that it was probably back to the Pilgrims. Anyway, and he is scheduled to be with us in October. We also have a Western Mass field director who we will be tapping into, who is the field director for the Massachusetts Association for School Committees. And we will be tapping into that. But what I sent you were two things. One was the key decisions for the Amherst, Pelham Regional School and Union 26 school committees in terms of planning for a transition, planning for a search. That was one of the things that I just wanted to go over briefly. I'm not going to go over the entire thing, but I want people to understand the scope of what we are about to undertake. And that the scope of this is pretty remarkable in a large sense, but it's also something that gives us some comfort because there are clear guidelines and a clear roadmap for us to follow. So what I want all of you to do is where it says planning for a transition, there's number one is the assessment, our assessment. The other thing I want to say is that this whole search, the entire search, is up to all of us at this table. And it must be a cooperative and collaborative process, not only with us, but also with the community at large. more importantly, one of the main tasks of Union 26 as superintendency union and parts of the regional school committee is to appoint and seat a superintendent search committee. That is a really incredibly important task. Sarah, I saw you had your.
Yeah, thank you. I just think maybe we should do a quick run through of how the committees work together, right? So there's the Union 26, which is the superintendency committee, which is as Irv said, the 3 officers from Amherst and the 3 officers from Pelham, and they represent the elementary schools. And then there's the regional school committee, which does the middle school, the high school, and Union and Summit Academy. So that's how that all works together. 'Cause it's a little funky, but that's how we have to make it work.
Yes, all right. Anyway, so for those of you who've gotten the materials, I just want to point you to the first part where it says number 1 is to assess, and that is one of those things where you say, well, we're going to assess who we are in terms of attractiveness of the position for us, the regional school committee and the Amherst School Committee and Union 26. How are we going to be
Excuse
attractive?
me, point of order, or sorry, can I just say 2 things? Amherst Media asked us to speak within 2 inches of the mic so that people at home can hear us. You have a nice booming voice, so I'm sure they can hear you, but just in case, that's what Amherst Media came out to say. So there's one thing.
Did they come out? I didn't see them.
Oh, yeah, sorry, I thought you were here. They said
no.
to speak two inches from
No,
the
I
mic.
mean, did they come out recently when I was speaking?
No.
Then they're all right because they
Great.
said they would come out.
Awesome. So the other thing I just wanted to mention is the Amherst School Committee actually does not have purview over the superintendency. It's the Regional School Committee and Union 26.
And if I said that, I was in error, but I didn't say that. What I did say was that we are in cooperation with the regional and the Pelham and the Union 26.
So
and
noted.
I wish to say that, yes, Amherst does involve itself in that because 2 of the members, will be 3, are from Amherst. In other words, what I guess I want to say, I know that all of those legal things are there in terms of how we arrange ourselves. The most important thing is that we collaborate with each other, that we cooperate with each other, and that those differences become minor when we view what we have to do in terms of selecting a leader. I would like those particular boundaries to fade into the background and come into view only when we have to deal with the legalities of it. And I hope we can do that. So, are there any other questions? So let me continue. So I would really appreciate if everyone goes through this, especially before the next meeting comes up, and I want to go on that. The other most important part is number 4, which is how much public participation must you have? And that is really incredibly important because the public is going to be important in terms of their part in this whole thing. We, of course, through the selection of a committee, a search committee, will, in our charge to that committee, hopefully say to them and provide the context that we expect robust public participation. So I won't go through the rest of these, but I want everyone to familiarize yourself with them. And are there any questions before I go on? Yes, Tom.
Irv, I just want to reiterate oversight of this process from our policy manual, policy code, CBC, the Amherst Pelham Regional School Committee, and the Amherst and Pelham School Committees, the latter 2 cooperatively through the Union 26 School Committee shall jointly appoint a superintendent of schools. Such appointment shall be confirmed in a written contract of employment, which shall include terms and conditions of employment. That's all.
Thank you.
Policy.
Jennifer?
So I assume we're going to be talking about the search process in today's meeting. Is that right?
Yes, we are.
And we can
Pretty soon.
bring forth ideas that we might have.
I would hope so.
Great.
Anyone else? All right, so, search process. The search process for me, and other people may jump in on this, this is merely my opinion, starts with us coming up with a selection of a subcommittee. That subcommittee will be charged with putting together and establishing and setting a superintendent search committee. All right. All of us, obviously, we could, but I think it would not be productive. All of us could be a part of that, but I am going to suggest that we select a subcommittee from among the Union 26 and the Regional School Committee. A committee to then work to establish a superintendent search committee. Within that, that search committee comes up with a particular timeline. Yeah, Anna?
So,
That's all right. They hear you, but as long as you're close enough.
You're good. Go ahead.
so I think one question is, does the search subcommittee determine the search overarching strategy? For example, are they putting together a committee that will do essentially all of the work trying to find the candidate, or will they determine whether they want to use a consultant to try to do some of the outreach and advertising and searching for us like a headhunter? Or do we need to make that decision before we set up the subcommittee?
All right, so there are two things in here. One is the subcommittee, which will be charged with selecting a search committee. That's separate, so subcommittee. The search committee, in terms of its charge and what it will be charged with, is setting up a search for a superintendent, which includes all of those things you're talking about. They are the ones who are responsible for carrying out all of the details of the search. And if they decide that they would like to hire a search firm, that is something that they could do. The search committee is our official representative. Yes, Jennifer.
So I think that's a great idea to form a subcommittee of our two committees. And so we'll call that, as you just said, we'll call that the subcommittee, which is different from the search committee, which will include community members, I assume. That remains to be seen. So, but I guess my proposal or idea is that the subcommittee does the research and legwork about the search. But I think it's important that the Regional School Committee and Union 26 in total make the decisions. Because I think that those decisions need to be made in a public meeting. And so, the Regional School Committee meets every 2 weeks. My suggestion is to have, for the foreseeable future, all those every 2-week meetings be joint with Union 26, and have the subcommittee, whatever that looks like, report back to the two committees every 2 weeks about, the subcommittee could come up with proposals that then the joint committees would approve. Because I think that those decisions need to be made in public. And so I'm gonna, so those are my ideas. And I envisioned the search committee, or my idea is that the search committee well, I don't know, I guess I'm open to thinking this through. I envision the search committee to be more like a screening committee to screen the applicants, to screen the initial applicants that apply for the position, but that the subcommittee would still be the body that makes the decisions, like should we hire the subcommittee would research the decisions, like should we hire an outside firm, which I personally think we should, and bring that decision to these joint committees to make the decisions, because again, I think those decisions need to be made in public.
All right, so usually, and in the past, every search committee that met in public. It was never, ever not public. Their meetings were always public, they were always posted, and they will be posted. But that has been something that's been tradition and is part of the protocols of a search committee. Secondly, in terms of what you're asking for, the search committee, once impaneled, is impaneled under the charge that we give them, i.e. Union 26 and the Regional School Committee. So if when we impanel the search committee, the committee says, well, we want you to do A, B, C, D, and E, report back as to us every 2 weeks, etc. That's up to us. But that search committee has to have the autonomy and the ability to do whatever it considers to be necessary to produce the best possible superintendent candidate. The search committee does not make the decision as to who the superintendent will be. That is a vote of all of us. But they present us candidates. They present us candidates that have gone through a procedure and process that they have outlined, which they'll outline to us, which we will have an opportunity to comment on in public with that search committee. And the reason in my mind, and the reason and the way that I have seen it work before, is that it's more productive to have the search committee go through all of those processes rather than the entire regional school committee and Union 26, because it becomes incredibly cumbersome. Now, the search committee usually has at least 3 to 4 members who are school committee members. School committee members cannot be a majority of that. Cannot be. All right, so, but there will be school committee representatives on it as well as outside representatives. Sarah Beth?
I was thinking about Jennifer's idea about having, at our regular regional school committee meetings, to have Union 26 come and have the subcommittee report back, which I think is a great idea, because it not only keeps the committee abreast of, like, for those people who are not part of the search committee, abreast of everything that's happening, but it's also a really good way for the public to know what's going on. So I thought that was a fantastic idea. And then I think part of if it's either a discussion here amongst this group, or I actually think it probably should be a discussion amongst this group altogether, is what that search committee looks like. Because I think it's going to be really important to make sure that all pieces that our future superintendent is going to work with will somehow be represented on that committee, right? So we want some teachers, we want some community members, we want some central office, we want some school committee members, we want, I don't know, like, think about who this person is going to interact with a lot of different pieces, right? And we want to make sure, to the best of our ability, within a reasonable amount of humans, right, that all of those pieces are represented and feel like they're represented and have a voice in part of this decision. Is it going to be perfect? Is everybody going to be exactly happy with how things progress? Probably not, because it's too many humans to everybody to get along perfectly. But I think, as you know, making sure people's voices are heard is going to be incredibly important. I mean, we have a short timeline to do a really important thing.
Once again, the charge to the search committee is up to us. What we want them to do, how we want them to behave, how we want them to respond to us, the kinds of things we would like to see from them in terms of public participation, et cetera. Those are all things that we, as the school committee, can say and charge the search committee with. That's up to us. If we say to the search committee, we want you to report to us at every regional school committee meeting, which will take place, we can, that can be a part and parcel of their charge. In other words, when they are set, after they are impaneled, they are impaneled under a set of guidelines from the school committee. And I see Jennifer.
Tillman hasn't spoken yet. Why don't we let him go first?
Thanks. So I agree with the spirit of the conversation, but I'm confused between the subcommittee and the search committee.
All right,
My understanding was that the subcommittee was going to be chosen today to create the search committee.
Correct.
And then basically the subcommittee dissolves,
Goes away.
and the search committee is going to be the one that we then task, as Irv said, to report to us directly, because there really isn't a need to have the subcommittee anymore.
No.
Is that correct?
That is correct. Now, one other thing. If the, if the proposal for a subcommittee, and I'll put it forward as a proposal for a subcommittee to select a superintendent search committee, if that subcommittee is something that the school committee decides is not needed, then we don't have to have that. We can do something else. That is, I put that proposal out there as a way of moving forward. But that proposal has to be accepted by this committee. All right? So to be clear, I am going to at some point put forth a motion to select a subcommittee who would be charged with selecting a superintendent search committee. Yes.
I guess my question would be, would that subcommittee be public meetings, or would the subcommittee be private meetings? And if they were private, then would we have the opportunity for them to come report back to the whole committee, and we could actually make the final decision and not just the subcommittee? I'm a little confused how that
All right,
piece
so-
could work.
I mean, if
Where the power lies, I guess, is kind of what I'm questioning.
any subcommittee that is appointed by us is appointed by us under a set of rules, procedures, guidelines, et cetera. So if we want that subcommittee to come to, and I've said this before, if we want that subcommittee who is going to be appointing the committee, the search committee, to report back to us, and hopefully they don't report back to us only once, because we need that committee to operate expeditiously. So yes, and one more time, whatever the school committee decides in relationship to the operation, setting of the subcommittee and the search committee, those things have to be brought forward at the time when those two committees are seated, or before they are seated.
So, about the subcommittee being the ones to choose the search committee, is the broader committee going to have the opportunity to approve the people that they recommend for the subcommittee? Or is it entirely up to the subcommittee to make the decision on who's going to be the search committee?
Interesting, the only way that the subcommittee can be appointed is by us.
I understand that, but ultimately, so the subcommittee will make the decision about who's going to be on the search committee.
Correct.
The larger group will not have a say in that.
Yes, that's true. That's true. Because you can't, once you have the subcommittee seating a search committee, all right? Now, then it seems to me, if you're saying to the search committee that they then have to have approval to be seated by you, why do we need the subcommittee? Why don't we just all do it? And we become the committee. all I'm saying is that if we wish to be that committee, then let's go ahead and do it. But if we all don't want to be involved with that, the search for the superintendent, and we want to have a search committee seated and selected, what is the process that you want to have? One of the ways of having that is a subcommittee. The other way of having that is all of us. That's up to us, and I've said it before, we can vote on that. Go ahead.
So, okay, the way I was thinking about this was, there would be a subcommittee made up of a subset of us.
Yes.
And it would need to be not a quorum of any committee. We can talk about membership in a minute. And that subcommittee would be chartered and would not then dissolve after the search committee is seated, but that there's going to be work that's going to have to go into this search, that subcommittee can meet and do work in between our biweekly meetings and make recommendations that they bring back to the larger committee to ultimately decide on. And it would be things like the composition of the search committee. So I think that the subcommittee could discuss and come up with a proposal for the composition of the committee, bring it back to the joint committees to approve. And then a process for how to select people to compose the committee, bring that back to the larger committees to approve. Also something like, should we hire a search firm? What would that RFP look like? What kind of search firm would we want? Like, those kinds of things, I think, could be done by a subcommittee. They could be done by a larger search committee, and I'm open to thinking about that. But I think we need to balance lots of community input with the fact that this is going to be a big time commitment to be involved in the superintendent search. And if we have a subcommittee of this committee, that committee can do the legwork, do the research, but then come back to the joint committees to make decisions. That's how I was picturing it.
I just want to be clear. Are you talking about the subcommittee that I was proposing, which would select the search committee? Are you saying that subcommittee that we form stays and performs functions for the search committee?
So I was picturing that the subcommittee would do more than just appoint the search committee. Proposing a composition of the search committee would be one of the tasks of the subcommittee. And other tasks would be things like deciding on a calendar of community input, deciding on the venues of community input, deciding on whether we hire a search firm, deciding what search firm. Sorry, not deciding any of these things. I feel like the joint committees should make the decisions, but that the subcommittee would do the research, come up with proposals to bring back to the larger committees to actually vote on and decide.
All right, I just got to be clear here in terms of what you're talking about. There's a subcommittee which will be looking to impanel a search committee. Is that correct?
Yes, that's one of the things the subcommittee would do.
That's a subcommittee. What you're saying is that subcommittee will stay in operation to do such things as think about whether a search firm should be hired. Is that correct?
Yes.
Then what is the role of the superintendent search committee in doing that?
That's a very good question, and I'm open to talking about that. This is going to be, so first of all, I pictured a large search committee. I know large committees can be difficult to manage, but I feel like the more people we have representing educators, staff, our unions, parents, LGBTQIA people who identify as LGBTQIA, people who identify as BIPOC. I'm picturing a big but manageable screening committee to actually, whose one of their main jobs would be to review applicants. And if it's a big group, it's going to be cumbersome. And it's asking a lot of people. So I'm trying to balance having a lot of community input with not burdening the larger search committee with having to make too many decisions, which is why I was suggesting that the subcommittee does research, makes proposals to these joint committees, and these joint committees make the big decisions.
All right, so before we go on here, I think that what we need to do is decide upon the roles and responsibilities of subcommittee, A, and get that out of the way. Because then, when we talk about the roles and responsibilities of subcommittee, we can then pivot to the roles and responsibilities of the search committee, if all of us want to be in it. And then putting those two together and see if there's any overlap. And then we can eliminate the overlaps, because we don't wish to have those kinds of overlap. Is that a way forward? Jennifer?
I think that's a good way forward. And my suggestion on the role of the subcommittee is to meet regularly, to do the research and legwork required to administer a search, and to bring proposals to the joint committees for the joint committees to decide. So the subcommittees, for the most part, wouldn't make any big decisions. They would propose options, or make proposals or propose options to these joint committees, and the joint committees would make the big decisions publicly in a meeting like this.
I was gonna just say that I feel like that the subcommittee should kind of do the brainstorming legwork piece of it, and then come back, and the Union 26 and the region committee can actually make decisions based on the information and the legwork and the brainstorming that the smaller group has came up with.
All right.
It's how I envisioned it too, which is in line with what you're saying, Jim.
Tillman.
I feel that it will be very difficult to separate the tasks that the subcommittee is envisioned to do beyond selecting the search committee and what the search committee does. A lot of the things that you've described in terms of the action that need to be taken to have a successful search, in my background in higher ed, is that is done by the search committee. And I'm worried that we're gonna get into a situation where it's confusing about who needs to act what. So I would prefer a solution where the subcommittee really just does the work to figure out who should be on the search committee. They make a proposal to us, our big committees, and then all the work goes to the search committee, so that they can make, for the important things, recommendations to us, which we decide on.
All right, so what I want to do is take two more, and then I want a motion in relationship to the subcommittee to be put on the floor so we can vote on it.
So what if we do a little bit of both, and the people that form the subcommittee then slide in to being on the search committee, because the search committee should still have school committee representation. And then those school committee members who will now be part of the search committee, because they're gonna be here anyway, then they can come back and report. Not that other search committee members can't be part of that, but, let's be thoughtful with people's time.
Right, I mean,
So-
there's nothing to prevent the members of the search committee from being, of the subcommittee from being on the search committee. The subcommittee is totally composed of us, 100%. And there's nothing to prevent the members of that subcommittee from being on the search committee unless there are more than 3 of them, or more than a majority. It cannot be a majority of the search committee.
I was just saying, I could see the long-term subcommittee role being more of a liaison between the search committee and then all of us. Is kind of what I was thinking as Jen was describing it. So the roles and responsibility may be moving, and and just for time's sake, they would be more available than the whole Union 26 and the whole region at the disposal of the search committee, and so then they could kind of take a liaison role between the search committee and all of us.
Right, now,
It's kind of how I envisioned the subcommittee would still work
Yeah,
past just the selection.
just remember that search committee is going to need some infrastructure in order to be able to operate efficiently and effectively. And we can put that around, that would be expected. So does anyone want to make a motion in relationship to the subcommittee? Jennifer?
All right, I'm gonna make a specific motion. I move that we charter a superintendent search subcommittee that would be made up of one member from Leverett, one member from Shutesbury, one member from Pelham, and 2 from Amherst, as long as those 5 people don't constitute a quorum of either the Regional School Committee or Union 26.
Can you say that one more time?
Sure. I move that we charter a subcommittee made up of 1 member from Leverett, 1 member from Shutesbury, 1 member from Pelham, and 2 members from Amherst, as long as those 5 do not constitute a quorum of the Regional School Committee and Union 26. If someone seconds, I will speak to the motion.
I will second it.
Yeah,
May
go
I
ahead.
speak to the motion? So, okay, so 1 member from Leverett, 1 member from Shutesbury, sorry, it's just you, it's you two. If we have a member from Pelham, if the 1 member from Pelham is on Union 26, but not on the Regional School Committee, then the 5 of us won't be a quorum of the Regional School Committee. So that would be Margaret, or
Tom?
Margaret or Tom?
are on Union 26, but not on the region. So if one of you were on the subcommittee, then the 5 people would not be a quorum of the Regional School Committee.
Well, one thing, I understand the composition of the subcommittee, but I don't know what they're charged with doing,
Okay,
all right?
okay. So I'm gonna do.
In other words, you.
Yeah, you're right. I suggested chartering a subcommittee so that the purpose of the subcommittee should be part of the motion.
Yes.
Is what you're saying.
Yes.
Just to,
Discussion?
All right, before we go in discussion, I don't want to discuss this right now because I think it's an incomplete motion.
Well, the motion's been made and seconded. I think we should hear from people. I can make an amendment to the motion if needed.
I was not trying to discuss, I was just saying I believe Sarah Best could also serve,
But you're,
because she's not part of Union 26.
Correct.
but,
She's just part of Pelham.
right, but she's part of the region.
Region.
Right, but oh,
We'll have
okay,
too
so
many
that
people
would
in
be
the
to me,
region,
okay,
yeah.
okay.
All right, so,
It's funny.
Tom,
I just want to dispute the fact that I am not a member of the Regional School Committee. I think that I was inappropriately deprived of my position that I was legitimately given at our June 6th meeting up in Pelham, and the policy regarding selection of Regional School Committee members was violated. And I will speak to that later during public comment.
all right, that is something that I consider to be a Pelham issue and not a regional school committee issue, and therefore I will not allow us to take it under discussion at all. That's a Pelham issue. So, Jennifer, back to you.
Well, Irv, what do you think the charge of the subcommittee should be?
For the selection of a superintendent search committee. That's what they're charged with. That's what I consider the charge to be. Anyone else have ideas? I'm interested. Anna?
Go ahead.
I think that the subcommittee should also be in charge of doing some background, some legwork around whether it's advisable to use a consultant, identifying search firms that could be possibilities, and determining whether there is one or a couple of search firms that they would recommend, or whether there are no search firms that they would recommend, and to I'll stop there, but I think there's another role that the subcommittee could also take.
All right, just to remind you that the search committee will have all of those tasks to do themselves. The search committee itself, they will have to decide whether they want a search firm. They will have to decide a lot of things, all right? Now, the other thing that is important is that for us to remember, and I would be almost opposed to it, is that how closely do you want to monitor, control, have oversight in relationship to this search committee? That is something we have to answer ourselves. Jennifer,
I've spoken quite a bit. I don't mind.
all right,
allowing
Margaret?
others to speak.
I am going to make the suggestion that this motion be simply that we are going to select a subcommittee, that we not try to combine this motion with the charge, and that because clearly we have some disagreement, or not disagreement, but some differences of opinion about what the charge should be, so could we not decide to make the committee and decide who the committee is going to be, and then separately, if we want, maybe you let the subcommittee go and talk about what they think their role should be and come back at the next meeting with that. I just feel like we're trying to put too much into this motion.
All right, I mean, that simplifies it a lot. Tom?
I suggest that we not have a subcommittee, that we be the committee that does the work to create a selection committee and just leave out that subcommittee part, so that we can understand all of the rules we have to follow in terms of appointing that selection committee, and just leave out that subcommittee issue. It's going to go away, isn't it, Irv, when the search committee is selected? Right.
I mean, that's in my, but some people say, no, they should stick around.
That's still being discussed.
Right.
So that's an issue that doesn't have to be in the process. Let's just decide that we will choose the selection committee.
All right, so I just want to halt a little bit here. We do have a motion on the floor. And that motion needs to be dealt with. It has been properly seconded. Also, if I'm not mistaken, Jennifer would entertain a friendly amendment. Is that correct? So, all right,
I will make a friendly amendment
go ahead.
that we replace the word "and" with "or" at the end of your motion regarding the quorum, so that we don't have a quorum of Amherst Regional or Union 26 instead of "and."
He just added, he added "or" rather than "and."
Okay, why?
Because neither one should have a quorum.
Oh.
We don't,
Yes,
you're
yes,
violating the rules if you.
Sure, yes.
Okay.
Okay.
And separately from that, I think we should make the membership less restrictive than specific to towns. I think it should just be
Oh,
2 or 3 people from each, so that we don't have a quorum. And then I want to have a clarification what that has to do with work. But what the assumption is that people who are on the subcommittee will then also be on the search committee. You had earlier said that they would be a subset, and I didn't quite get that.
That's not a part of the motion.
so,
But it's
okay.
important.
Sure, I'm open to not specifying the towns of the people who are members of the subcommittee. I thought it would be great to have representation from all 4 towns, so that's why I threw that in. It also sort of a little bit, because we have Pelham and Amherst issues with quorum, it sort of fills the committee without having to worry about that. That's taken care of by the second part of the motion. So your other friendly amendment was to.
No,
No,
there
that
was
was
no
it.
other
That was
amendment
it,
other
okay.
than.
Other than not naming the towns.
All right, so can we come back? What then would the motion be with that friendly amendment?
By any chance, do you have it, Sarah Bess? Oh, okay.
Kind of. I
Okay.
mean, so it was form a subcommittee including 1 Leverett, 1 Pelham, 1 Shutesbury, and 2 Amherst. Yes.
Right, as long as.
As long as no quorum of any committee was involved.
All right.
So, Irv, you have said that the subcommittee and the search committee is going to have a charge that's given to them by us. So we don't yet know, we haven't yet decided what the search committee's role is going to be. We haven't said that the search committee will be the people who decide whether or not we hire a search firm. And as I said before, I want the search committee to be sufficiently large so that it has representation from many different community members. And I don't know, but I also want to balance having a big ask of those community members. And so I don't know that like every single person in the search committee is going to want to be involved in whether or not we hire a search firm. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. I'm sort of thinking out loud here because I do want I do want robust community input, but I also am aware that this is a big ask of people. We're going to have meetings. People have jobs. People have families. People have obligations. So I think that I want the community to be involved in deciding what's important to us in a superintendent, what the job description is going to look like, and I want a large search committee to actually look at applicants. But those decisions about like should we hire a search firm or not, and like what is our calendar of community input going to look like? Maybe that should be the search committee. I don't know. So that's why I'm thinking the subcommittee can do that legwork and research, bring it back to this larger committee to make that decision.
All right. What I want to do is come back to the motion and whether we want to, are we ready to vote?
I would still like to discuss something or bring up a point.
Is it related to the motion?
It's related to the motion she's made, yes.
Go ahead.
So I feel that there's only 8 of us at the table. So having the number, like, the reason to have the subcommittee is to make the process move smoother and faster. So I feel like if we are saying the subcommittee's not going to have an authority to make a decision, they're going to be brainstorming and doing the legwork to then come back to the 8 of us. 5 seems way too big to have to come back for 8 of us to vote on, because that's almost all 8 of us anyway. I feel like it should be 2 or 3 and not, I feel like 5 is too big.
All right. William.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean Tillman.
I think the important part is that it's not a quorum, because that changes the process by which that whatever the number is,
Right.
can act compared to having the full committee. That's why I'm in favor of having that subcommittee, and I don't feel strongly about the exact number.
Okay.
All right, so Jennifer.
I just wanted to point out, there are 8 of us now. There will be 11 of us once the 3 Amherst vacancies are filled, which may happen as quickly as next week. So it'll be 5 out of 11.
And we hope that at the next regional school committee meeting, we can reorganize Amherst at the same time. We're going to make it a joint one, so we can get on with the business of the region. Anyway, are we finished discussing this, and are we ready to come to a vote? Anna?
So we're voting on the amendment that Jennifer proposed with the very small amendment of making sure that there's no quorum in any committee, and not on the friendly amendment?
We're voting on the amendment.
So Tillman proposed a friendly amendment to not mention particular towns.
No, that wasn't my amendment.
Oh, that
Sorry.
wasn't your
My specific amendment was the
and-
issue about
and.
the
Oh, okay.
was-
Okay.
I did
All
not
right, all right, all right.
propose
So let's make sure what we're voting on.
Yes, please.
Sarah Beth, do you have with that?
I got it.
Do you have it?
I got
All
it.
right,
So I move to charter a subcommittee, I move to charter a superintendent search subcommittee made up of 1 person from Shutesbury, 1 person from Leverett, 1 person from Pelham, and 2 from Amherst, as long as the subcommittee does not constitute a quorum of the Regional School Committee and Union 26. Sorry,
or,
a quorum of
all right.
the Regional School Committee or Union 26, sorry.
Now, that has been moved, and it has been seconded. So are we ready to come to a vote? So we just do a show of hands. Doesn't have to be a roll call vote. So all those in favor of,
I'm sorry, Irv. You will need to specify who's voting, which committee.
right, the committee that's voting is Union 26. Is that clear? So all those in favor are from Union 26 for this particular motion? All those opposed? Well, that's great.
I think it just means it doesn't pass, because you
does-
don't.
Was it a tie?
It was a
Yes.
tie.
It doesn't pass.
It just
It
means it
doesn't
doesn't
pass.
pass.
Which leaves us where? Back to square one.
Yes.
It's a failed motion.
If it's a failed motion, then we have no subcommittee.
Well, no,
Or-
well,
No.
not
need a
yet.
new motion.
So
Not
now we
that
should
stuff.
So now we
probably
can
discuss.
Try
more.
again.
We can try again.
Yep.
So if anyone has a better idea in terms of what motion is going to pass, would you please put it on the table? I mean,
I'm really new here, so I don't know if I feel comfortable making a motion because I don't understand all the language. But I can speak to, for me, my hesitation was the specifics of who was on that subcommittee. Not that it to me felt too large and it felt too specific of who was going to be on it.
Sarah Bass.
I will move for the region, that the region create a superintendent search subcommittee consisting of four members, as long as none of those members constitute a quorum of any committee.
Wait a
Second.
minute, wait a minute, wait a minute. You are proposing that the region,
Yes.
if you're proposing that the region do that, then that does, and Union 26 is not making that proposal. And Union 26 is a superintendency committee. I don't see how you can make that motion.
So,
She can
So
only make a
because-
motion for the region. 'cause
You
she
can
can't
only
be
make the
re-
motion for the region, but it has no effect in relationship to the union.
exactly. You'll have to make the same motion. If should it pass at the region, then my recommendation would be to have the same motion made on Union 26. Because the way the region and Union 26 work they are.
I got it, Sylvester. Let's move, because it's time, so in your corner for the
Okay.
motion.
I did.
it was-
All right,
and then
so,
a second.
and then I think Jennifer seconded it.
And what is the motion?
It is to create a superintendency search subcommittee with no more than 4 members, as long as those 4 members do not constitute a quorum for any other of the school committees they represent. Bring it.
So,
So earlier you said 4, which sounded like exactly 4, and now you said no more than 4. Was that your intent?
Yes, I think no more than 4.
it's your motion, your committee, Sarah?
Discussion?
No, I was gonna say, has it been seconded?
Yeah, Jennifer.
Okay.
Jennifer. Oh, I'm sorry, was there discussion? No?
I
Yep.
guess, just
Go
to
ahead.
clarify, so earlier we were talking about Union 26, and so whatever motion, if they passed a motion, if they didn't pass a motion, then the regional would also have to pass the same motion.
Yes.
So we still have to do that. I
Yeah.
mean, both of them
Yes.
have to come to an
Yes.
agreement,
Yes.
and hopefully they're the same. I guess they don't
They
have to
have
be. Hopefully they're the same. Do we need to put in the motion that the understanding would be that it would be the same up to 4 that the Union 26 also proposes?
Can't do that.
Or can we not do that? Does that make
I don't
sense? Like,
think-
because it could be 4 and 4, so then it's back to 8. So is there a way in the motion to?
No.
No? Okay.
So the region makes their motion, and then the people in the region vote on that motion. And then the Union 26 makes their motion. Hopefully they are the same motion. Hopefully the same motion passes. And then that subcommittee is formed with only 4 people. Total. Up to 4 people.
With the region,
Combination together. This is a joint thing that has to happen with everybody working together. It's very confusing. I apologize.
but it's not like the region would have 2 slots and the union would have 2
No.
slots. We would have to cooperatively decide
Who's there?
who's those 4, but none of that needs to be in the motion?
No.
Okay.
Your,
Irv?
it's you.
I know. I'm
your
asking how
motion.
you vote.
Yeah, go ahead. It's your motion.
Yes, I know, but you have to vote on it. You are part of the region.
I know, are you calling for a vote? Are you doing a roll call vote?
Oh, all right. Sorry. I apologize. All those in favor? Oh, thank you. All those opposed? Excellent. All right. Back to you, Irv.
All right, so do we have a motion from Union 26?
Can I just say I would like to pass the same motion that
Would you, Jen,
region, no, can we say that or no?
your union?
I am union.
Yes, so you
So
can,
can I just simply say that would like to pass a motion to adopt the same motion that the region just adopted and approved?
no, you have to say what that motion is.
Okay.
So tell me what the motion is.
It is to, do you have it written down? Just so the verbiage is the same. So to create a search superintendency subcommittee with no more than 4 individuals that compromise a quorum. No,
That
that
do
do
not.
not, that do not compromise a quorum, I apologize. Do not compromise a quorum.
All right, this motion has been made. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Tom?
I have a question. I thought when Sarah Beth first brought up her motion, I thought she said 4 members from the region. Is that
No.
no longer true?
She didn't say
She
that.
didn't say that.
Oh,
So
she did.
I think she said 4 members from the region and Union 26.
Okay.
Just,
So
you know,
it's
4
it's
members
not-
from both.
Not
committees.
Yeah.
4 members just from the region. I just want that clarified.
All right, yeah. All right, so are we ready to come to a vote here on Union 26? All right, so all those in favor? There's 3. Those opposed? 1. It's 3-1. The motion passes. All right. I guess now that we know that we're gonna have a search committee, and that search committee will have 4, we need to choose 4 members.
Do you mean subcommittee?
It's a subcommittee.
Okay, you said.
I'm sorry, the subcommittee. We need to choose 4 members to that subcommittee. So, the way I would like to do it, excuse me,
Would it be beneficial to first define the tasks that that committee is supposed to do to figure
interesting.
out who might want to or not want to participate?
all right. Here's my take on it. The subcommittee will be charged with forming a superintendent search committee. That will be the charge of the subcommittee. All right? They will be charged with forming a superintendent search committee. Now, other than that, if I were going to add anything, I said the subcommittee will be charged with forming a superintendent search committee with input from the region and union. But that's not for me to ask. We've already said we're going to have 4 members. What I would like to do is get those 4 members selected now.
I thought that through our previous conversations that we kind of talked about that the subcommittee would do legwork and brainstorming, but they wouldn't be choosing or having the final say on what the search committee was made up of, that would come back to all of us to make those
Yeah,
decisions.
the search committee has to be ratified by this group. In other words, when the subcommittee does its job and says, here are the 8, 9, 10, 15, 20, 100 members of this search committee, we're proposing to bring it back to the larger school committee, which for our approval of that. We have to. That has to be something that we take responsibility for.
But I think this was part of the subcommittee's role. Like, is the subcommittee's role going to be brainstorming and legwork and bringing back their recommendations to us to then decide what the search committee is going to look like? Or what I understand from your words are that the subcommittee would be tasked with making the search committee instead of just doing the legwork and the grunt work and the brainstorming about what that could look like, to bring it back to all of us to then make the decisions on what the search committee was going to
All right,
look like, or the
yeah,
makeup. It.
if we select this, or I'm not saying if, when, tonight, we select this subcommittee, my hope is that that subcommittee will hit the ground running and get ready to go out and form a search committee. Now, if that particular, this subcommittee who is going to be looking to form that search committee wants greater input from us, or if we think that that subcommittee should have greater input from us, then we need to make that decision right now. In other words, we don't have a lot of time. And the more cumbersome we make the process, the more time consuming it's going to be. So I'm open for suggestions as to how to slim this down. I want a straightforward process. Subcommittee is formed, we've already agreed to that. I want to be able to select members for that right now. After we get those members, we can decide upon what we want to charge them with. But why do it afterwards? It doesn't matter. It's still going to be, anyway. Jennifer.
So my proposal is to charge the subcommittee with making recommendations to the joint committees on the composition and membership of the search committee. So that's my recommendation for the charge for the search committee. I want to say, Irv, you're right that I don't know that necessarily that I agree with you that we don't have a lot of time. It's true we have a time frame in which we need to get a superintendent into position, but it's such an important task that we have in front of us. I don't want to rush it. I think it's important that we take the time to think, to process, to hear from the community. We need to have, in the document that you shared with us, there was a proposed timeline. That proposed timeline was really quick. That proposed timeline had us making an offer in January. And I think that's way too quick, and we haven't talked about it, but that's like way too short and unnecessarily short. I think, like, working backwards, if we want to have someone in place by July 1st, whoever we choose is going to need to give notice to their, assuming they're employed. So, like, if I'm just making up days, like, if, let's say that person needs to give 90 days notice to their current employer, that's April 1st. So that gives us, like, from now till March-ish to, like, do this all right. So yes, we shouldn't dilly-dally, but I don't think we should rush. So anyway, I just wanted to say that. So again, my suggestion is that the charge for the subcommittee is to recommend the composition and membership of the search committee to the joint committees.
Margaret, before I go here.
I guess I have a question. So if the subcommittee is going to come back to us with a recommendation or proposal on membership for the search committee, does that mean that they are going to do the part of the process that, when we went to that workshop and heard from people about how these searches have been done, will the subcommittee do the public meetings that are probably going to be required?
No, the subcommittee that we've just voted on has a specific charge, and that is to form a search committee, superintendent search committee. That's specific, that is very specific. That's what we said in that
We
subcommittee.
haven't
We
decided
have
that
not
yet.
given them a charge
We
yet.
haven't given them a charge.
No.
I'm sorry. Anyway, the subcommittee has been decided upon. There is no charge. However, I want to move on because we spend a lot of time on it. I want, because some people are saying, well, before we choose the subcommittee, let's give them a charge. And I'm thinking, well, we've already said we're going to choose a subcommittee, regardless of what the charge is. We've said we're going to do that, and we vote on it. So what I'm saying is, let's choose the members of that subcommittee and then give them the charge.
I think we need to have at least some direction so people know what they're signing up to do. I don't think you can ask someone to volunteer blindly without any direction, right? So if that subcommittee is just creating the makeup and recommendations for what that search committee should look like, is a very different ask than if you are doing that and then running the entire search.
Right.
And so-
So let me come back and, because I've forgotten. The motion that we just passed for the subcommittee, what did that motion say?
It said to charter a subcommittee made up of 4 members, as long as they don't constitute a quorum.
To
Period.
charter, that's it?
Yes.
All right. So we've said that. We now said we're going to choose that subcommittee. And what I hear people saying is, well, we don't want to go ahead and actually make that so until we decide upon what they're going to do.
Right.
All right, so I'm all out of fresh ideas here, and we need,
Tillman has a
and
really
and
good
we
idea.
and we need to know what that is so we can move on, because we spent an inordinate amount of time on this, and there are people here. So can we get our minds together now and decide upon exactly, but at least some broad strokes as to what this subcommittee is going to do? And I'm open to suggestions, and I see that Sarah's ready to write, so go ahead, tell me.
I think it would be great that the people who are constituting the subcommittee and who are going to spend time thinking about how best to run a search process to recommend a potential search committee and recommend a process that describes the broad steps of the search process and how the search committee and the subcommittee will interact to us at the next meeting.
And what is that you're saying? Is that a motion?
Suggestion.
I was trying to answer your question, but I can make it a motion. I move that the superintendency search subcommittee, or the subcommittee search one, be charged to identify and recommend individuals for a superintendent search committee and describe the proposed process of how said subcommittee and search committee interact in order to recommend a final, or candidates to this regional and Union 26 committees.
I will second that.
All right, Sarah Best, did you get most of that?
So the superintendent search committee will make.
No,
rec-
subcommittee.
Yes, did I say the wrong word? I apologize. Subcommittee will make recommendations to Regional School Committee and Union 26 of the individuals to make up the search committee, the process that will happen, and how the subcommittee and the search committee will interact to recommend the superintendent candidates.
And at the next meeting of this body. I mean, if you want to have a timeline, right? You're concerned about time, no? Within 2 weeks?
Well, we don't have to have, we don't, that was, you don't have to have, that which you just read is good enough.
Okay.
And so all I need right now is anyone to second that motion.
She seconded,
did
but this is
second.
for the region, not the union,
That,
correct?
yeah,
Okay.
and also for the union, I want to do it both together,
We
You
can't.
can't,
Can't-
because he's not part of the union.
conflating it, so we can do it separately then. Why don't we just go ahead with the region, and Sarah, why don't you,
I'm sorry, I have a question about the motion. I know I seconded it, but I want to
Yeah.
discuss the motion. When you say process, do you mean like the search process? When you say recommend a process or describe a process, do you mean the search process, or do you mean this process for selecting the search committee?
I think we have a process documented, and I think we can, there's a suggestion how to follow it, but there's key steps in that process. For example, how will we do interactions with public meetings? How will, will we use a search firm, and things like that. So
Okay.
the high-level steps.
Step.
And then who decides those? Is it the subcommittee or the search committee? I don't
Okay.
think we should do this here. I
Right.
think the subcommittee should hash out a proposed plan that they can present to us,
Yeah.
and then
Great.
we can just approve it or modify it.
Okay, thank you.
all right. So,
This is Sarah Best.
Sarah Best, and then we'll come back to the union, because Sarah Best, if we can get yours passed, we can get the unions.
Okay, all those in favor?
Oh.
Gets
All those
complicated.
opposed? All right, motion passes at the region.
All right, all those in favor of Union 26?
We have
For
to
the-
pass a motion.
For the motion, well, let me come back, all right. Sarah Best, would you read that motion?
So the superintendent search committee, search subcommittee will make recommendations to the regional school committee and Union 26 of the makeup of the search committee and the process and how the subcommittee and search committee will interact to recommend superintendent candidates.
Can I say so move?
You can say so moved.
So move.
All right, and
Second.
second is Tom. Any further discussion?
So I was under the impression that once the subcommittee recommends a search committee, the subcommittee goes away.
Well,
That was,
that is,
To be
you know,
determined.
that's definitely to be determined.
That was not
And
in
it's
the
not a
motion.
part of the motion.
Right.
And nor was
Well,
it
it is, because part of the motion says the subcommittee and the search committee are gonna work together.
true.
And if the rules say that the subcommittee creates the search committee, right? Then the subcommittee goes away, and it's this board, the joint, that has to accept the search committee.
Well,
There's no process between the subcommittee and search committee. It's
Here-
between the search committee and the
Alright.
joint committee.
what we are now discussing is whether this motion on the floor is to be voted upon. And you're discussing a particular point about the motion that already has been proposed and seconded. So if you are objecting to a particular part of that particular motion, then you would have the right to not vote for it,
Right.
all right?
I was making my point to be clear,
Right, And-
that is a concern I have,
right,
and I'm not clear about it now.
all right. And I think that's clear in the motion, but anyway,
I'm not part of Union 26, but may I offer a
you
clarification?
can offer it for Tom, but
Yeah. So in the process that we voted on can lead to the subcommittee recommending that they dissolve after the search committee is created, or it could lead to something where they are more involved. We have not decided yet. The motion says that we are letting that subcommittee figure out what a good process is and propose it to our committees for approval.
Any further discussion? All those in favor of Union 26? All those opposed? 3-1. Passed. All right. That's positive. The next step is for us to actually get this four-person, is that correct? Four-person group done right now. So, I'm going to propose that we take volunteers. So all of those who would like to be on this subcommittee, please raise your hands. One. We have two. There's three.
You don't have to have four, it's up to four. So if four people don't want to volunteer,
I think,
we don't have to force people to be on it.
that's right. That's right. And
But we are more than happy to have four.
Margaret, did you raise your hand?
Margaret raised her hand.
Well,
Margaret, come on, Margaret.
so what do we have now, 2?
Two.
You have two.
All right.
That's 3. Anyone else?
I'm not sure if the 4 would be met, but I would throw my name up there if there wouldn't be
All right, that'll be the fourth one then.
if there wouldn't be
That'd
a.
be,
It would not be a quorum in
would be a-
Pelham.
Because Margaret's not on the region, and it's
We're
only
good.
4, so
We're good.
we're good.
we're good.
That does
We're
not
good. All right.
constitute a quorum
So-
of any
So
committee I can
let's
think
get
of.
those names down.
Quick, before
quick.
we
That's right. So one is Jennifer, Margaret, Anna,
And William.
and William. There we go. Now, you 4 get together and make nice and let's move this down the road. And we will expect, you can determine when you get together. We'll leave that up to you.
Okay.
All right, that's that for me. And I would like to be able to adjourn Union 26.
Is that a motion?
I'm making a motion for Union 26.
Second.
By, any discussion? All those in favor? Union 26 is adjourned. I like that progress.
You can adjourn Pelham, Margaret.
Oh, right, sorry. I make a motion that we adjourn the Pelham School Committee meeting.
I will second it.
All right, all those in favor? Opposed? We are adjourned.
Point of order, Sarah Bass. Can we take a break, a 5-minute break of the Regional School Committee, and then come back for public comment?
Yes, it is 7:50 right now. Let's come back at 7:55 for our regular scheduled.
It wasn't that
A
bad.
lot of stuff got talked about.
I was thinking that it was worse time.
They told me to, well, I did when I came here. They told me to go to the public access.
Where are we?
And I had to like agree to something and then it was. I kind of get bored though. I really wanted you to raise your hand because I love your thoughts. Thank you.
So that means you're back,
Appreciate your thoughts.
Well, for this,
but you're not on the region?
no.
Who was on the region then, from Pelham?
William and Sarah Bess.
And that's it?
Yes, we only have 2.
We can always come to you for questions, right?
All right.
And my nose is big. I've never had a nose bleed before. And I'm like, why? No, yeah. I was like, I'm sitting here. I was like, why is my nose bleeding? And then feeling like self-conscious about like having red on your napkin as you're sitting here. You know? I went to the bathroom real quick. Okay.
Kind did you get any cheese and what
Is that for everyone?
I wish, right? Actually, I definitely have more than I could handle here, but we did a drive-through dinner on our way here. Did you? Date night. Date night. I know, we ate in the parking lot. It was so romantic. Here we are.
a debate about whether or not the process by which they selected two representatives. And so he had been selected in June, and they redid the selection in August. Horror, absolute horror. As part of the general reorganization. There's elements of, like how it's posted, they've been going back and forth about some continued disagreement on that, but my only concern when I'm looking at like the board docs, it lists him as the regional member right now. Because it's literally, I think, today that our attorney sort of made a more declarative statement about where it's at and is going. Okay. It's like, for like public, right, it's not accurate. Right. I don't know how much your involvement in that would be. I try to stay out of it, but, because it's really theirs to determine, and so, and they could revote,
Well, their region should have what's listed online. I'm just saying it's accurate. The region should have it accurate.
yeah, no, absolutely, I think that's it.
Sorry, I didn't hear what you guys were talking about, but I've been wanting to inform you that your mics are on.
Yes.
Okay. No, it's just about accuracy of what's online.
Oh, okay.
From Minnesota.
Yeah, right. I just wanted you to know, I noticed that now.
He's wearing shorts.
The sanity runs amok. Ooh, fuck. Where are we?
Just a general reminder, the mics are live. So on a short break like this, they don't always sort of stop streaming, they just keep going, and so it kind of continues to broadcast.
Then suddenly it's okay to be farther than 2 inches away.
Maybe even recommended.
Well, that doesn't look good. Oh. Well, was it supposed to? Oh, here it is. It's over there.
Alrighty. Okay, so we
One.
are
2.
back in session. Okay, so our first agenda topic is public comment. I did not receive any written comment, so if there are members in the audience that would like to come make public comment, you can come up at the microphone and you'll have 3 minutes each.
This public comment is to inform the Regional School Committee of a violation of policy. On June 6th, Pelham School Committee selected 2 members to fill the vacancies that existed in their 2 positions on the region as specified by the policy. I was one of those 2 members selected. On August 29th, the Pelham School Committee, 2.5 months into my guaranteed full term, reselected the members of the school committee. I protested that. The chair of the committee went to the attorney for a judgment. The judgment the attorney gave at that time agreed with me that the selection on August 29th was invalid. Last week, September 14th, a motion was made at the Pelham School Committee meeting to have another selection made. A vote was taken on that motion. It did not pass because there were 2 yeas and 2 nays. Just today, I got a note from the Pelham School Committee Chair, Margaret Stancer, that the attorney had changed his mind about his opinion on the August 29th vote. That according to policy BDA, the committee had a right to choose a successor. So I will just quote to you policy AAC-E, Section 2, Part D. When a vacancy occurs on the committee, the local school committee of the town concerned shall select a replacement who may be the replacement on the local committee if such exists, or a local committee member who is not already the member. So when a vacancy occurs, the local school committee goes back. Policy BDA, school committees, school organizational meetings, policy under regional school committee says that each selected member will become a member of the regional school committee on the day of his or her selection. And he or she will serve for the duration of the member's term on the local school committee or until a successor has been selected. Now, there was no successor. There was no open vacancy. There was no person in the post to require a successor. So both policies were violated. And the attorney, Mark Terry, ruled that those policies were not violated. So I dispute that. I believe I am the legitimate representative from Pelham, one of the two, selected on June 6th, and I am due my full term on the region for the length of my term on the Pelham School Committee. Thank you.
Pelham has
you.
a problem.
Is there anyone else that would like to make public comment?
Hi, just in response to the process.
Can you say your name?
Sure. Keith McFarland. I am a teacher here at the high school, over 15 years, and a school committee member in a nearby district. Gone through a couple of superintendent searches. One of the things that I would recommend is developing a policy or a system by which you would hire and or discipline a superintendent. There was a lot of discussion about how groups were formed, who was going to be on it. As you're going through the process, I would really recommend that you codify it so that the next time it happens, you have a distinct process that you have in place. Systems in place are important so that you have something that you can go to. The policy or the tree recommended from the state are good guidelines, but they're only guidelines at best, and you can see that there's a lot of nuance to it. And having something that's personal for this district, how to bring committees together, when to make the decisions, and then on the other side, if you do have to discipline a superintendent, how to bring a committee together. The subcommittee should almost be a standing committee of people who would come back to this larger committee to report what's going to happen with the superintendent, either it be recommendations for hiring or for discipline. And then just a couple of recommendations as well. I would recommend a consultant to go to bring names forward. It is a huge lift to do the interviews, to do the site visits, to do the advertising, posting, and you mentioned that we all have jobs and there's a lot of time so a consulting firm is really a way to go. And then having a large group in the final committee just of all the concerned parties is the best way to go before you bring forth 2 or 3 names to this group to decide. So, but the recommendation is, as you're going through this, codify it so the next time that you have to do it, you have a system in place.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jenna Schwartz. I want to publicly say how glad I am to see that William Scher is one of the Pelham School Committee's representatives on the Regional School Committee. Having a regional school committee whose membership reflects the ARPS community, our students, families, teachers, and staff, as well as the broader community, is so important. So we're really glad that that's what happened. I'm glad, I should say. And I just want to say a lot of my public comment is stuff that you all spent the last hour and a half discussing. So some of this may be a little bit, sorry, Irv. Some of this may be a little bit redundant. I'm actually really glad to hear that, you know, a lot of the things that I came in with on my mind are clearly on your minds. But I'm going to go ahead and read it anyway. So with this discussion on the agenda tonight, I wanted to stress that this presents an opportunity for rebuilding trust between the school committee and the public by having a search process that's transparent and equitable, and a search committee that has diverse representation, including those for whom English is not a first language, the LGBTQIA plus community, the BIPOC community, members of the APE, and surely others. How the applicants for this position relate to the recent crisis that has deepened mistrust and brought questions of accountability to the forefront will be of utmost importance from my perspective. I've read through the packet that Irv shared in board docs, and on page 4, there's a list of important elements for the school committee to consider in determining the search process. And some of the ones that stood out at me were what makes our district different, what do we want in a district chief executive? What are the critical skills we seek in our new leader? How can we be sure that our search will address our diversity, equity, and inclusion priorities? What are the key responsibilities and challenges confronting the district and the next leader? How do we want to engage the district? Surveys, focus groups, involvement in interviews. Whom do we want to involve in the process, and who will lead the process for the school committee? Even though I know these are available to everybody to read, I just wanted to read a few of them during public comment so people who are here or watching who haven't had a time to look at this list can get some sense of some of what's involved here. And as the previous person said, these are guidelines that, you know, obviously you're going to be fleshing out. But my question is, how does the committee plan to do everything possible to have a search process itself, including who's going to be answering those questions, that really will be equitable and truly representative of our community, and especially the perspectives, voices, and priorities of those who are too often not at the table. Part of why things became so difficult this summer is that people in positions of power, because elected officials do have varying degrees of power, perceive the public, some people I should say, perceive the public as overstepping when our concerns went unheeded. The public is the lifeblood of our school district. And the public includes teachers, families, students, school committee members. Can I finish? It's like one more sentence. How the regional, thank you, school committee engages the public in this process can be a show of good faith to truly move ARP's leadership toward a more respectful and collaborative relationship with those who work and learn in our schools. And I hope you'll make representation a central consideration as you move forward. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, Jennifer. My name is Georgia Malcolm. I've worked with the district for 10 years, and I work in the athletic department. I'm the assistant to the athletic director, and I also do student activities. And I think I'm glad to see William here. You know, as a black woman in the school, I've faced racism a lot. I believe the district currently has about 3 MCAT complaints. And I think it's important, you know, probably you guys are going to be in the paper tomorrow, I suspect, because the lifeblood are the faculty, the staff, the people that work there. There's so much going on. And they have really never been consulted. Like, how is the superintendent doing, right? I mean, as you know, the superintendent reports to you, but you don't really know what's happening in the schools. And I think I just want to really reiterate what Jenna said, that it's important to have diversity. It's important to have representation. You know, so many things are happening in the schools, and I don't think we've ever seen any school committee member there. You know, and you have to figure out a way to engage, because things could become better, but it has to be collaborative. You know, the teachers that are there, the faculty, that they're experts. and they have to be consulted. And if there's so many things happening and there's no one to tell, you know, to really save some of the things that are being made public. And I would just really encourage you, whether, you know, to make whoever is selected, look at non-documented immigrants, look at, you know, Latinx, AAPI. You just have a diverse LGBTQ, young, old, whoever, to be a part of that. Because I've been in many interviews, and when things land, it lands on us differently based upon our lived experiences. And, you know, it's really important, because something that someone says, you may not say anything. It's like reading a book, right, in the curriculum. A white person reads it, and they don't get it. And then if a person of color reads it, comes across totally different. So I would just really encourage you to have representation.
Hi, I'm Allie Wick-Slim. First, I just want to say how refreshing and nice it is to hear the language of transparency on this committee tonight. It's really nice to hear people talking about the public as stakeholders and collaborators, as opposed to adversaries, and it gives me hope for what's ahead. So I'm grateful for that. I also want to talk about what Georgia was talking about, which is representation and what we often hear referred to as the lens. I'm really grateful to see William here tonight because he represents a lens that is important to me. I think we would all agree that really important things were missed last spring and people were hurt as a result of it. And it wasn't anybody's fault necessarily that they couldn't see through a queer or trans lens what was going on. But you might have noticed when lots of community members and LGBTQIA+ people showed up in this room, it's because we could, because we felt the emergency when we heard what was going on for those kids. We had the lens and the lived experience, and we knew that lives were at stake. And we came in the way we came in with the concern and the emergency that we came in under because we had the lens to see that. So we need LGBTQIA representation on this committee at this time more than ever. And William's role is really important because of that. Sometimes people who hold privilege can make the choice to step aside and allow space and voice and representation for people who don't have that. We have a lot of heterosexual people on this committee. It would be awesome to also have somebody reflecting our lens. And as Georgia said, that extends to race, it extends to language, it extends to socioeconomic level, it extends to disability, which is something I think that Amherst Regional really needs to look at closely. We need people, all these important committees that are going to be coming up, search committees and decision makers that are going to be chosen. The way to earn the trust of the community back is to continue seeing us as collaborators, continue using the language of transparency, and to create decision-making bodies that represent who we are. And to depersonalize that so that instead of clinging to power and holding on to the idea of what somebody is entitled to, they can say, I can make space for somebody else to have a voice here because they might hear or see something I won't. William is going to see and hear things that a heterosexual person wouldn't. There are members of your committee who will see things through the AAPI lens, through the Black lens. There are really important elements to that can't be quantified and can't be replaced. There's no replacement for those things if they're not on the committee. So I would just urge you, as these decisions come up, as these committees are going to be chosen, as we decide how large a body is going to make decisions, to be expansive in making space for more voices, not less, because that's where the trust will be rebuilt. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Okay, we'll move on. Thank you all for coming and speaking. All right, so Doug, what do you got for us?
So, in the superintendent's update, just a couple of small things and one bigger thing that's going to be a difficult one, I think, for us to hear and talk through a little bit, but I'll answer the questions the best I can on that. First and foremost, it's that time of year that we have open house. So Thursday night this week, the middle school has open house. And Thursday of next week, the 28th, the high school will be having open house. So for the public at large, if they're wanting to see schools and you know, generally it's an invite to the parents to come and kind of experience a little bit of their kid's day. So hopefully they'll be able to come and spend those evenings with us and get a sense of the building and the people that work with their kids all day, every day. And so we're looking forward to that. I think the other thing that I want to update you on here, and not to get into some of the other topics, you know, because I could go into, as far as just an update, I could get you into other topics on the agenda, but we'll get to those, is to briefly update you on where we stand with Title IX investigations. So I'll talk first about sort of process that we're in. It's a fairly involved process and you know, sort of climbing the learning curve on this particular aspects of it, but currently we've received the reports from the investigator. There's a formal sort of cover letter with those reports that go to each of the complainants as well as the respondents. Complainants who brought it forward, respondents are the people that have been named as potentially performing harmful acts. So it's gone to those folks. They have a 10-day period in which they can, 10 sort of working days or school days, 10-day period in which they can provide, you know, ask questions, provide feedback. At that point, then we'll go into a step that's called the responsibility determination. And that's basically a determination, was timeline violated or not. And then there'll be a time period for appeal if they are not happy with the process or the result of that determination. And then once that happens, I believe that's also a 10-day period. I could be wrong on that, but then once that happens, then personnel actions can be taken. And so personnel actions currently for the Title IX are the respondents are all in Unit A, and so we follow those things that are specified in our contracts relative to that personnel action process, and it has particular timelines and that sort of thing. So I just want to lay out those sort of steps. The other piece, there is one additional report that we're expecting from the investigator. It will not be a Title IX report, but it will be a personnel report and a result of investigation. And so that will be coming by the end of the month. This last conversation I had with him, which was late last week, I think it was Friday, his expectation is to finish that by the end of the month. But I think the other thing that I wanted to share with you, and I've talked about this with our own counsel as well as the investigator to get their perspectives and their experience on this, is that the Title IX reports and the other investigative report that we will get will all be considered personnel records. And as personnel records, they'll have restrictions on what can be made public. So we're still working through what can and cannot be made public. It's going to be pretty limited, so I think that's going to be hard for folks in the general public, because I think that there's a lot of interest in the outcomes and what was found, what wasn't found, and all of that. I think we're going to have to be conscientious of the fact that they're personnel records and it's limited. We don't want to expose the district to any unnecessary liability. Not just from people who are named as respondents, but others as well. So we want to be very cautious with the information, and I think that we'll work with counsel as far as if and what we can make public. I asked the question about like an executive summary from the investigator. Long story short is that still becomes a personnel record, so it doesn't really help. It can kind of shorten the amount of paper to read through, but the ultimate result is the same, is that it's still considered a personnel record. And so I know that for a lot of folks that'll be a disappointing thing to hear, and I think that sort of my sense of this, and I've said this to folks in our sort of inside the district, but I think I'll say this publicly as well, is that our intention is we take the things we learned and that we will be learning about what happened, good, bad, or otherwise, that we can improve on and get better at, and make those changes, alterations to our process procedures approach to things to be a better district. You know, again, I don't want to overstate where we are at the moment. We're still in process with getting notification out to people, allowing them their duly entitled response times. So it's going to play out over time. So that's another thing, is it's just slow and keeps being, you know, fairly lengthy. So, you know, patience in that regard. Obviously, any, you know, like I said, anything that we can, you know, reasonably make public that you know, is not harmful to the district and not harmful to or put us at a greater liability risk is going to be, you know, we'll share that as best we can. But I think it's kind of you know, sort of a difficult circumstance, because I think there's a lot of expectation, both maybe on this board, but also sort of publicly, about what we might see or not see. It's going to be pretty limited. So I just want to sort of set people's expectations now about that. And so I think that's the main thing I want to catch you up on here. I mean, we've got some other things on the agenda we'll talk about, but I'm happy to answer any questions people have, which would be everybody.
We'll just go down the line. Jennifer?
I have several questions. The first is, Doug, you described the process for the Title IX investigation reports. You said that they were sent to the complainant and the respondent, and they had 10 days to respond. Then there's a responsibility determination. Was there a Title IX violation or not? And then there's an appeal, and then there could be personal actions. Where are we in that timeline?
We're in the first step.
We're in the 10 days.
We're in the first 10-day period where the reports have gone to the complainants and the respondents. And so they have a 10-day window to post questions, provide commentary, et cetera, before that responsibility determination.
Are you able to tell us when the 10-day clock started?
The 10th day is the 28th.
September 28th will be day 10.
I believe so, yes.
Okay. Okay, and then you said there's going to be one non-Title IX report that's expected at the end of the month. My understanding is, if that report involves the superintendent at the time or the assistant superintendent, it will come to the school committee?
Yes, but it's still considered so it would have to be dealt with in executive session.
Well, that was my question. Like, how would it come to the school committee?
Right.
We would schedule, Sarah Beth would schedule an executive session.
That's correct.
Okay, and, sorry, two more quick questions. Or this is one comment and one question. I hear what you're saying about things not being able to be made public, but I want to ask, and perhaps you can pass this on to our attorney, can we release as much as possible, even if it's heavily redacted? Like, can we redact, but still be able to release things? I don't know if you can answer
I've sort of
that.
posed that question. I think it's an evolving question for us. So I've sort of posed that because I know that there's a high interest in having some information, but I think we want to be extraordinarily careful around that. But you know, that is sort of an ongoing sort of request and evolution of it, but it's probably not terribly much, would be the short story. And it would, the other thing is that it would be something that's so sort of handled by us, meaning through either council or, you know, a couple of staff that have, you know, sort of access to that it would then beg other questions about, well, you know, their authority to do that. And so I think it may be, you know, what is or isn't fully, I mean, it would, you know, let me back up and say this differently. I think that questions might be, if we had a sort of heavily redacted document that would be made available, that would largely be done through council, you know, then I think the immediate question is, well, you know, who put council in charge of this, right? And so, I mean, that's, you know, as a district, and we hire, you know, our council for expertise and you know, to provide, you know, their view on that. But I don't think that necessarily is I'm not sure the public would necessarily be happy with that, I guess is a simple way to say it. You know, they might be fine with that, you know, but I think it's also, I'm not sure that there might be anything that could be released in that regard, given the way that the reports are constructed. So I would plan to have not really much of anything in regard to these Title IX reports, just because I think the way they're constructed and the way in which they're structured is such that it would be difficult to tease out something that wouldn't still be considered a personnel record. So I think it's good. The short story is it's going to be really hard.
Yeah.
And I think how that plays in a sort of public relations standpoint is still going to be hard, even if we have something that comes out, I guess is the more concise way to say that.
And then, sorry, my last question is, will we be able to be informed, just yes or no, were there terminations as a result of the report? Or maybe that's another question to take back.
I'm not 100% certain.
Okay.
I think maybe, but I'm not 100% certain.
Okay. If we could ask, find out,
Yeah, I think
that would be something.
Well,
yeah, I can check
That would be great.
specifically about what could or couldn't.
Yeah. Thank you.
Any other questions for Doug?
yeah.
Irv?
I must say, hits me rather hard because I was assuming that we would have access to more information. Because when we think about the role of the school committee in terms of oversight of the superintendent, and if there were processes and procedures that should have been in place but were not in place, then we have no way of then saying to you, Doug, or the incoming superintendent, or for us to look at how we look at our broad oversight role in terms of policy, in terms of oversight of the superintendent. So we can say, here are the kinds of processes and procedures we need to make sure are in place so that this does not happen again. And you, as the superintendent, need to make sure that your administrative and managerial procedures are such that these kinds of things are on a path that can give you the kind of feedback that will not allow these things. But we don't have that information, so we can't, it's sort of like having a board of directors being blinded in terms of what the operational part of the corporation is doing. And that is not a good thing. And I know you can't do anything about it, but it's not good. It doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good for me to sit here and say, all right, yeah, I get this report, but I get nothing. You know, Doug, I've been a CEO, I've been on the board of public corp, but it feels like our hands are tied in such a way that we do not have command of the ship that we're supposed to have command of. Right. And it's,
yeah, I think it's extremely frustrating. I mean, I certainly appreciate that. I do, and I think that's really at the root of the general sort of public desire to know the detail. Is it's like, well, what are the I mean, broadly, Title IX is the law, right? And so it's like you need to comply with the law and set up your systems, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But the specifics, in these particular cases are ones that are certainly ones we'll want to take action as a district, and we'll have to do that in a way that's respectful of the boundaries we're under. But I appreciate that the committee's really truly flying blind here in some respects. And I understand your frustration.
it's obviously has to do with administrative command and control, but more broadly, it's like we have nothing in order to learn by. I mean, we can make all kinds of assumptions, which we definitely will.
Right.
We have to.
Right.
We have to we have to assume that there were breakdowns in terms of command and control, and processes and procedures were not in place, so that these things would not have taken. There were no early warning systems. The kind of things that we would have expected to be there weren't there. We are going to have to infer that they were not there, and then ensure that they're put in place. But that doesn't. Data is really important.
Right.
All of us know. Not having data hard data, hard information to go on makes the ability to respond much harder.
Right.
So, and more difficult. So I think the most difficult thing for me is, how do I explain to the public that we don't know?
Right.
You know, it's sort of like your child's been harmed. There have been things that have happened, but we're not allowed to tell you about it. But we know that your child has been harmed.
Right. I think for me, the struggle that parallels that is that even internally, there's a very limited set of folks that know particulars. And so the staff of the district are going to have to trust myself and the small number of people that are kind of privy to the details, that the sort of actions we're taking and the steps we're taking are also addressing what was there, because again, those folks won't see it either. So I think internally, as well as through a board like this, we're all in a tight spot in that regard, and so that's a struggle for me, because that limits the partners that I have to sort of think through how do we approach this better. So it's a tough spot, and it's a difficult one, and so I'm appreciative of your spot, because I'm in some ways in a similar spot, because I can't share internally either that information. So there's going to be a lot of trust by both this body as well as the staff of the district that we're taking actions that we can in ways that are going to be better for the kids.
Anna?
So this is kind of along the lines of what Jennifer asked, but do you think you'll be able to release a statement about whether there was a determination of responsibility for each of the cases, or something along those lines?
Yeah, I believe so. I believe we can do the sort of
no details, but like yes to no, they were responsible, they were not responsible.
Yeah, those kind of things I think are possible, because I think that's districts often will do a press release. We may do something of that sort, and it has the sort of broad fundamentals of determination, but not specific to the particulars.
With regarding to personnel information that will be the result of that process, who has access to that level of information so that they can take action? I'm not asking for names, but kind of the roles within the school system.
So clearly the superintendent does. Things that are related to Title IX, we have a Title IX coordinator, who's Marta Guevara, who has been intimate to the conversation all along as part of her role in that regard. And then we get into sort of personnel action steps, then human resources will be the other personnel that are involved in working through that. And of course, and the one other person I would say is Talib Sadiq, because he's principal of the buildings that involve the staff that are there. So he will be the sort of first, so like the letters that went out to say, hey, here's the report, those were signed by him, because he's sort of that first, sort of authority for them as a direct report of him. So he will be involved in that as well.
Thank you.
I have a few questions.
William?
Sorry. I was looking at Doug, not you. So if, I guess, I'm assuming that the second report may or may not include something about the past superintendent. And if there is anything in the reports, then it would come to the school committee. Does that go to the Region School Committee, or does that go to the Union 26 Committee? Does it go to both?
Both.
Both, okay.
Because you both have the my understanding is, because you both have responsibility for selection and appointment of the superintendent, then you are supervisory to that person.
Okay.
So you would have access to that.
And then you made mention to all, and I can't remember what it is, and I can't read her notes. Everything was falling under Unit A. Could you clarify what Unit A
I'm
means?
sorry,
I don't-
little
it may
inside
be
baseball there,
my
I'm
lack
sorry.
of
No,
knowledge.
it's, so we have 6 unions.
Okay.
So we have APAA, which is administrators, mostly assistant principals, a few directors and central office. We have AFSCME, which is our maintenance and custodial staff, drivers. We have, get always get the letters reversed, UFCW, which is our food service department. And then we have 3 that are under APEA, which is Amherst Pelham Education Association, and it has Unit A, which is teachers, Unit B, which is clerical staff, and then Unit C, which is our paraprofessionals or paraeducators, I should say. And so Unit A staff, and each of those 6 have slightly different contracts. Most of the language is very, very similar amongst all those, but there are slight differences between them. But, in this case, the 3 people as respondents, if we go into personal action, would follow the rules under that contract in which they're employed.
Right. Okay. And then I guess another question is, and this may be my own stupidity, who is in charge of HR right now for the system? Because you mentioned the HR person would be
Right.
involved.
So we've got, clearly we have our assistant superintendent on administrative leave, so they're not there at this point in time, and they're also subject to some of the reports. And we have sort of the sort of next person in the sort of hierarchy is on maternity leave at present. So we have asked our former HR director who's retired to come back and spend some time with us and help us navigate some of this. We've also, just as a general sort of, here's what's happening in HR, quick sort of update. We also have another retiree of the district who's come back and helping us with some licensure questions around staffing this, So in the next period of time, probably throughout this process, it'll probably be our retiree, which is Kathy Mazer, if you want to know her name, but she's a retiree that's come back and is providing support to us in that regard. And having, a tremendous amount of experience has been very helpful in regard to this, and so we have that, sort of circumstance that's fortunate for us to have that experience.
So I would like, I'm sorry.
Yep, go ahead.
I would like to say that I feel like the public, the committees, everyone was waiting for Title IX to come out to be the answer, and it doesn't sound like that's going to be the answer. So I would go back to us and say that, regardless of, now we understand we're not going to have clarity from this Title IX investigation. That there's clarity that there was harm felt by the kids. And there's clarity that we need to look at policy regardless of the Title IX outcome, because now we're being told we're not going to have that outcome really presented to us. We need to dig in and look at policy, and as to piggyback what Irv was saying, we have to stand up and figure out where the breakdown was and really make sure we have policy in place so this doesn't occur again. And it's sad that the school committee didn't start that process earlier. Now that we're almost towards the end, that we're being told we're not going to really have much of the Title IX to look at. That we all, I shouldn't say we, I feel like as someone that was in the public for a large part of this until today, I felt like that the school committee members were saying, let's pause, let's wait until we get this report back, and now we're being told we're not going to get a report. And so it really feels like that it's time for us to start looking at policy and looking at maybe where the breakdown was and what we can do to help support the students and the staff and the teachers in making this work better. I guess that's my 2 cents, but anyway. Thanks.
Any other questions for Doug? Jennifer?
Sorry, I have 2 more things. So for months now, one of my questions has been, will any of the reports involve the superintendent or the assistant superintendent? And it seems like we still don't have that answer. But Doug, I thought I just heard you say the assistant superintendent is the subject of some of these reports, which is the first affirmative thing I've ever heard anyone say about it. Is that actually the case? Is the superintendent the subject of one or more of the reports?
So I think the assistant, the assistant superintendent will be mentioned in the report. To what extent, I don't know, because I have not, I wasn't interviewed by the investigator, but clearly, if you have I think just from a chain of command standpoint, there'll be some mention, whether it's, positive or negative, I don't know.
Okay.
I think we should say that.
Okay.
I just don't think, I just don't have any idea, to be honest. And I think, and if I may, one other thing I'll just share. I think, there's a, I think there's a tremendous learning curve that certainly I've been climbing over the last few months, and certainly, over the short period of time in, May and June when I was sort of filling in and this was getting underway, I think there was a lack of clarity about what we might or might not be able to sort of share. And I think it's evolved in a way that, we have more clarity about that now, which is unfortunate because it just doesn't, provide much opportunity for sharing broadly with detail. But I think again, and like I said, that's also internal to us as well as with the public and the school committee. So I think, I think the commitment I'm going to make is that as a staff, we're going to work on sort of putting the pieces in place to not have this happen, because it's been, to be perfectly honest, it's been kind of a miserable experience. I think that's an understatement. I don't mean to make light, but and certainly not to any harm anyone's felt. But I think, the commitment from me is that we're going to take every action possible to sort of put those systems in place to not have, even the question raised, regardless of what the specifics, the outcome are. It's like, we don't even want the questions raised. One thing I remember from high school sophomore literature class was Julius Caesar, and even Caesar's wife must be above contempt sort of circumstance. So we want to be in that place where there are processes, procedures that are of sufficient robustness and solidity that these questions just don't come up because they're just not possible. But we'll see.
Sorry, I have my one final thing. Building off of what Irv and what William said, and also what you just said, Doug. Irv, you said that it feels like we're flying blind because we don't have the information, but if it turns out that we do get to see almost nothing of the Title IX reports, that doesn't necessarily mean we have to fly blind, because we have our superintendent and HR and Principal Sadiq will have seen the reports, and we can ask of them, what steps are you going to put in place to make sure that like we can be forward thinking, and we can ask them to report to us, or we can at least ask Doug to report to us. What has been put in place? What are you going to put in place as a result of those reports? Don't share the reports if you can't, but what are you going to put in place to make sure that those things don't happen again? And Doug, you mentioned trust, and that the public and the school committee will have to trust you, but I just want to name that trust has been compromised, and deeply compromised, and so that needs to be built. So I just wanted to name that, I've always believed that trust is something that has to be earned. So I hope that we and you and we can earn each other's trust and the public's trust through our actions and behaviors and words moving forward.
So, what is the only positive that I can get out of this is that we would be wanting to hear from you, Doug, similar to what Jennifer just said. What steps and what actions and what processes and procedure are you going to be putting in place that did not exist before? Knowing that is critical. It is critical for us to know that, because then it tells us what was missing. All right, and we need to know what was missing. Then the public will know what was missing. All right, and administratively and managerially, then you can say, hey, managerially and administratively, these things were missing. That gives me some sense of satisfaction that then can be determined, and the public can hear that.
Anna, and then I think we need to move on. We have lots of other things we have to do.
So, you may get to this in later in the agenda, but I was wondering, there's certain, there were some clear issues with chain of command in the structure, and one of the problems was that there was no third party for people to go. There didn't seem like there was a third party for people to take complaints to that was not related to the school system, that if they had a grievance with the school system, that they couldn't go to that person's supervisor, and they couldn't go to that person's supervisor, and they couldn't go to that person's supervisor. Who could they go to? And that, I'm hoping that that's going to be addressed in this restructuring and revisiting how things are working in the school system.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's certainly a question that's, certainly been in my mind for a while now, is sort of, you have some checks and balances and and this, I'm gonna hopefully speak broadly enough in just generally thinking about this, is that, in a role like mine, there's things you delegate to people and you trust that they get done, and what are your checks and balances to make sure those things get done. So for example, in the finance office, for example, the treasurer can't write the checks and sign the checks, right? Can't do both pieces. You gotta have somebody else that sort of writes the checks, like composes the checks, puts them together, and a separate person who then reviews that and then signs that, right? And so there's a check and balance system, and when we get our financial audits, they're making sure that we did all those kind of things, and a variety of others that are like that. That's a simple one. But I think that, looking internally at sort of what we have and how do we structure our, sort of checks and balances to make this work. There are some external systems that exist, there's a, at the state level, that sort of thing that people can access a little bit, but certainly making those known is one thing for sure. And then I think that, if we need to have internal sort of mechanisms for people to be aware of those sort of options, that they know about them and know how to access them. So I think that's, the things I've been thinking about around those issues, for sure.
Thank you. Okay, good. All right. So moving on, next we have the chair's update, which I don't have very much. I just want to say that a large number of us took a webinar last week regarding, from the MASC, on how to hire a new superintendent. And it was really informational, and we're going to have someone from MASC come out, I believe, at our next meeting to share with us and share with the public more information. We'll be able to ask questions, and I'm really looking forward to that. And then I think that is it. Are there any school committee announcements? Jennifer?
I just have one comment, which relating back to Doug's, the first part of your superintendent's update, which is that about the open houses. So I heard that this middle school open house this week is the same night as the block party. So I just hoping you could take that feedback back to the middle school folks. Did they know it was the same? Maybe they knew it was the same night, and there was no other night they could do the middle school block, the open house, and maybe they just had to, or maybe they didn't know, and maybe they in the future could just that's a big annual thing that happens. Maybe they could take that into account in the future.
Yeah, I think that, I guess they didn't know. Or, it may not have been widely known that the block party was gonna happen when they were talking about the sort of trying to identify a date that made some sense in schedules. And so, yeah, it wasn't a, sort of devious plan to keep people from enjoying the block party. And certainly, I think, hopefully people can kind of maybe go a little bit to both. But yeah, I'll bring the feedback to them to sort of check the community calendar a little more closely.
All right. So our first item of new and continuing business, I think we are going back to Doug for our LGBTQIA+ update.
Right. So in early August, Superintendent Morris, laid out a whole host of things that he saw as actionable steps, and that was what he did in putting that together, I think, and I think he may have shared that with you all in conversations, was tapping into sort of internal commentary about what things we needed to do, what things that people were wanting, but also getting feedback and taking input from the community as well. So there's a number of things listed, and a lot of those things have started to happen. So I want to update you on some of that. So we did a training with every staff person the day before school started. And central office went to each of the different schools. So I was at Fort River, where Pelham and Fort River were both meeting there and going through a training, particularly LGBTQIA topics, and sort of building a foundational understanding in that group. There's a lot of folks in those communities that have some experience and some familiarity with all of that. There's a lot of people that walked in and had no idea what they were going to experience, and so it was, certainly the one I participated in was an excellent training. I think a lot of people got a lot out of it, a lot of enrichment. I think there was a strong sense of, there's some more stuff we need to do and more training we would like to have. And so those are conversations that are going on now. So there's been a lot of positive feedback from all the different locations. We debriefed afterwards with staff from all the buildings and got a strong sense of feedback from folks on that. We also made note of who couldn't make it that day. There are a lot of different reasons people might have been able to make it, so we're definitely going to cycle back and bring that group of folks in, and we're planning on building the capacity anytime we bring on new staff to inform them and educate them on sort of the fundamentals that we all adhere to in the district. I think that yesterday, I believe, some staff met to talk a little bit about that, but also to start thinking about and planning for, sort of future professional development within the district. We have a curriculum day on November 7th, which is Election Day. We will have a series of sessions that day as well, where we continue this conversation and this learning from everybody. We'll do a broad, the current plan, and it's still evolving because, it's a sort of plenary section that everybody will come to at the beginning, and then sort of break out more topic-specific things. We'll tap into external expertise. We've been partnering with the Stonewall Center and let me get the name correct, if I can find it here. What is it? I believe it's the Safe Schools Project for LGBT plus students in the Massachusetts Commission on LGBTQ youth. Those are all partners with us on this process and finding folks and resources and ideas, and also, we have a tremendous number of staff that have over time built expertise, and so we're looking at all of those as resources that we'll use in that training day. And along with that, I think we're working through a variety of other ways to engage staff and students, on these topics and continue to sort of build capacity with ourselves, and then build a systemic mechanism for continuing to build that community and that information and continue to evolve and improve our awareness and understanding. So let's see what other things that I want to mention specifically that have happened. There's a few things, some more pragmatic things. So one of the things we've done is pragmatic. That's I believe it's on the website right now. Is if someone wants to indicate that they wish to have their name changed or their gender identity altered, that there's a simple form that we built for people to do that. We're working on the sort of non-electronic version of that. We've also modified our sort of we've typically called it our bullying report system. But it really is, it's kind of more than that, and so, we've included some questions around harassment and essentially sort of Title IX or other activities, so we can capture that information and understand that there's a additional layer of review that we're going to take relative to that reporting, so we have those systems altered a little bit, and we're going to refine those as they go through the year and get utilized, and so we try to put those things in place. And the other thing, and I literally had a meeting about this today, is there's a parent advisory group and a student advisory group that we're forming, and I'm going to mangle her title because it's about 3 feet long. Maureen Fleming, who's doing mental health and behavioral health administrator for the district. The titles eludes me. I'm sorry, but she's going to be spearheading both of those groups. So we have, as required by Massachusetts, we have a special education parent advisory group, and we have a English learner parent advisory group. That one's called Impact for Multilingual, I think is what we've termed it. But those are required by state regulation that we have those and support those. So we're going to parallel that kind of structure. around, LGBTQIA plus, sort of families and students. So I think we're working on language today about, I think that we'll reach out in the newsletter for folks to be partners with us on that. So I think people should keep an eye out to see that. It should be coming shortly. And then students, they're already starting to work on putting together some students to have those conversations internally with the kids and talk about, their needs and their advocacy that they want to see. So those things are all sort of in place and getting in place, and I think it's continuing to evolve, and I think people are, I would say the lion's share of our community has always been, attuned, but we're realigning with those values, and I think we're in the process of that, and continuing to sort of build systems and put things in place to move forward and create an environment for our kids so that they can come to school, engage with the curriculum. That's what we do for all of them. Sorry. I always get choked up when I start talking about kids. But I think that's fundamentally our purpose, is to make sure that the kids can come and be prepared and able and be able to learn, and whatever that takes. And so there's a whole host of things we do. This is a part of it and a critical part of it. So we're committing ourselves to this, and the other work that we do to make sure that kids can come in these buildings and have success. So that's where I think I'll stop, and certainly answer any questions people have about where we are and what's going on.
William?
So I really like the community piece that you're talking about, having the LGBTQ, my term would be queer, so I use that, but I include everyone. But for the queer community to be able to step up and have a voice. So I appreciate that. I guess my question would be, what was the training, and who decided what the training was, and where did the training come from that was done for the administrators and the staff?
So, we partnered with the Stonewall Center and the
Massachusetts, with that long.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. So we work with them, because they have a level of expertise that, well, we have some folks that have that level of expertise, but to do it at scale, with a very broad spectrum of experience coming into that, they were very, very helpful in sort of putting that together. And so, there's some really fundamental things about, and you may have seen the graphic, where it has, where they talk about gender identity versus sexual identity versus biological, gender, et cetera, et cetera. And so, some of those fundamentals of, like, here's the different sort of broad terminology and categories that people are in, different pronouns that are in use, and the evolving picture there, and let's see what else. There were, they showed a couple of video clips of families that have gone, and experienced transition in that way. And so, we sort of got the spectrum of it. And then there was a bit of dialogue between, staff and the moderators. And we had a couple of moderators from in each of the buildings, where, sort of posed questions and talked about strategies and how to do this or that, and, and how to approach, circumstances that people experience. And I think that's part of what built this sort of need that people felt, oh, this is great, and I really feel a need to have some more, and it'll get much more specific, because I think, when we got kind of everybody, and that included, everybody, food service, bus drivers, the whole thing, because they interact with kids and they need to know these kind of things and have an understanding of some of this, and it's not necessarily as common for them to sort of experience and understand that is needed, and yet for teachers, and for paraeducators that are working with students all day, every day in an educational environment and dealing with kid conflicts and that sort of stuff, there's a little different level of detail or focus that might be necessary in an educational setting, specifically, learning in an instructional sort of setting. So I think, we'll start to see as we go through, and particularly I think in November when we do some additional work in this area, we'll have some things that are a little more focused for specific circumstances that are, more particular to people's actual, so their work. right? And yet we'll still have some broad things for folks, and so I think it's, you know, it's a lot more and kind of, you know, as far as how we think about this and how we can, you know, keep, you know, sort of looping people in and improving our sort of knowledge base and our fundamentals of understanding. And
I guess I would just make sure that we don't narrowly look at and lean on one support system for helping us with the trainings, and there's lots of national organizations, and I would say we should focus on looking and making sure that we have a broad enough approach to looking where the training is and who's doing the training, and just make sure that it's global enough and it's not just Amherst focused.
Yeah.
And part of that too, I would think would be part of the community building, and when you have the queer group that comes together, that it's not just them coming together, but it's then also being part of possibly the policy making, or you know, giving advice on where you could turn to for other trainings. I feel like we have a wealth of knowledge already in the public community here, and have we even tapped into that? And I'm hopeful that the group that you're talking about then could tap into the power and tap into their knowledge to really make sure that the training that the district is doing the best that we can for the students.
right, and I think that's part of the reason for you know, sort of looping in, you know, the kids in some ways. You know, their focus is probably more about sort of their needs, and that's fine. And I think that that's you know, wholly appropriate and what we can expect. Obviously, if they have some, you know, experience that's broader than that, then, you know, we want to hear about it. And I think, you know, in sort of tapping into, you know, sort of a parent guardian kind of group is thinking about, all right, how we broaden the sort of perspectives and that sort of thing. I will also say that one other aspect of the training that I'll tie into is that, you know, the folks that, you know, did the work with us, you know, some of what they were sharing was, here's a bunch of resources we found from a lot of different places. So they had curriculum materials and books, but also just, hey, these are other websites you can go to see this sort of conversation about this and understand it better. And so I think that, you know, I think as a community, we're generally sort of very curious and wanting to seek as broad a spectrum of opinions and you know, ideas about how to approach things as we can. So I think that's, you know, sort of an ongoing you know, mission of us as a district is gonna, and you know, we're talking tonight about, you know, LGBTQIA+, but there's, you know, you can pick a lot of other sort of categories that are very important to our district and critical, you know, around race, ethnicity, socioeconomics, all of those things that are often areas of bias, and also are also areas that prevent kids from being able to get to and learn and take full advantage of what we have to offer. And so we're thinking about that too, I guess is the thing I would say in that regard. So I want us to be, and we are, I think that's one of the great advantages of living in a town with two colleges and a university, and, you know, a couple others that are not too far away, is that intellectual curiosity and sort of thirst for additional knowledge and a broader set of perspectives is always there, and you know, we're committed to sort of exploring that.
I have one last point, sorry. So I've not seen it on the website, I haven't looked, but it's a place where a student can go and declare what they want the pronouns to be.
Yep.
I don't know how lengthy that is, but there's something, it's called like a gender profile survey, and it's kind of like a 504 or IEP, where it's like a 5-6 page document, and you form a committee of who's going to oversee that, and then a child could either self-identify or a parent would identify the child, you know, however it works. But it's not so much just what pronoun you want to be called, it's what is your preferred bathroom you want, because that might be different than the preferred bathroom I think that administrators think that maybe you could use, but the child could choose that. You know, it's, do you have a trusted adult that you can go to in this community? Who is that person? And make sure that everyone knows who that person is. It's how safe do you feel to disclose that that's your house? You know, so it's not just, this is my pronoun. It may be, this is my pronoun, I feel safe in the classroom. This is my pronoun that I have to use when I'm at home, because I don't live in a supportive community. You know, it may be, this is a pronoun that I use with my grandparents. So at the open house, if my grandmother walks in, I can't use, it's very complicated. It's not just
Right.
pick a pronoun.
Right.
So I don't know what the pick a pronoun looks like online. I haven't looked at that, but I feel like it needs to be a more lengthy document and an investigation into what is best for that particular kid. And there's not a blanket, like, everyone can use this bathroom or that bathroom and we're gonna pick a pronoun. It really needs to be individualized. That's why I kind of say it's like a 504 or an IEP plan. And, you know, you have a committee that's at the middle school, you have a committee that's at the high school, you have a committee that's at the elementary school, and they know best practices, and they can say, like, these are the resources you can go to if you need, you know, help with X, Y, and Z, and it just kind of, it lays the plan out, and if the kid feels bullying, you tell them this is the point person you're gonna go talk to, so it's just very detailed, laid out, and individualized. And is that something that we're looking at doing? Or
No,
is it
that's
something we're already
absolutely, so
doing?
that's, well, yes and yes, I guess is the short answer to that. So certainly, and again, part of the training, one of the sort of, you know, they didn't go into every single question on it, but certainly they laid out exactly that type of document, and that's part of the frame from the standpoint of what we put into that initial question, you know, sort of questionnaire about sort of identifying, I'm oversimplifying by saying it's like, you know, you can pick your pronoun and your
Right.
alternate name, it's more than that. And the piece is that prompts the follow-up, that gets into some of that greater level of detail, and I think we're still working on, you know, how best to notify more broadly, you know, those adults, you know, and how best to interact with kids, you know, as this comes up for them. It's like, how do we, you know, sort of have that permeate quickly and appropriately, and yet still protect those questions when there's circumstances that are difficult, you know, perhaps a home that's not as accepting of that, and how do we strike that balance? And, you know, we're still sort of working through, you know, sort of the nitty-gritty of that in some ways. But I think, you know, that you know, we're working in that direction, and I think that, you know, it's you know, a continual area of improvement that we'll kind of continue to work on and try to get a good sense of how best to sort of meet the needs and communicate out the right level of detail to the right number of people. And I think we're going to keep working on what's that, because it's pretty subtle, you know, conversations around that. And I think we're going to, you know, we'll be, you know, working on how best to sort of execute that and you know, sort of do that well, you know, and we'll make mistakes, I'm sure. Not intentionally, obviously,
Right,
but nonetheless, there'll be times we just don't have it quite right. And I think the other thing I think about is that sometimes it's an evolving circumstance. And so it's got to be revisited. So how do we do that in a way that's timely but not pressing, but not lagging either, right? So how do you try to hit the right timing of that as it evolves for some
The
kids?
gender profile may change month to month, year to year, you
Yeah.
know, and it has to be like a living document.
Right.
And the kid needs to know, the student, the kid, the child needs to know how to access that.
Right,
So that it can be moved where they
right,
need.
right.
You know.
Right.
Thank you for listening.
Any other questions? Okay. So our next agenda item is open meeting law review, which I put on the agenda as well as also being requested. So in the packet there is, oh, look at that. These are excerpts from a larger document with more specifics, or not specifics, but, you know, the connotations and notes regarding open meeting law. So just to quickly highlight and go over it, open meeting law is, I'm sorry, communication, right? They have listed 4 questions in how determining whether something communication meets open meeting law. So one is it a communication among members? Is the communication a deliberation? And is the communication involving something that is within the committee's jurisdiction? So they have it listed as, you know, any multi-member body created to advise or make recommendations to a public body or to serve a public purpose. For example, our school committee, and then a deliberation is any oral or written communication through any medium, which includes emails, among a quorum of a public body. The only thing one of the things that doesn't count are like procedural things like scheduling meetings. Can you meet Tuesday at 5? No, I can meet Wednesday at 6. Those aren't, that doesn't count. And then, a deliberation can be anything that communication that involves a simple majority when it applies, that could be decision-making. And the other piece I wanted to make sure we were cognizant of was that it also includes serial communication. So I have a conversation with William, but then William has a conversation with Tillman, and Tillman has a conversation with Anna. And then Anna has a conversation with Irv. There are too many people that could have, influenced in decision making, so that we don't do either. So that was a very quick run through, and we've had a couple of missteps lately, so I just thought it was a good idea to go through and review. So I am happy to answer any questions the best I can, or if someone else has something they'd like to include.
I just
Yep,
think it would
William?
be possibly, and you could tell me if I'm wrong, it would be best practice to say if I wanted to talk to Jen, I said, hey Jen, I want to talk, Jennifer, sorry. Hi Jennifer, I want to talk to you about X, Y, and Z. Is that okay if we talk? And I feel like we should lead our conversations with consent to make sure that what I'm going to say, she can listen to and hear. And I shouldn't just assume that because I haven't talked to anyone else that I can talk to her. And I had someone try to talk to me about something and I didn't feel comfortable because I had already talked to another person from my own personal experience. And so I feel like that we should try to make best practices before we even start having a conversation, just having consent and make sure that both of the people that are going to be talking about it are comfortable and don't feel like we would be in an open meeting violation as a best practice.
Jennifer?
I think that's a great idea. I would even take it one step further, and when you want to talk about something with another member that is a decision that would come before the committee, that you ask, have you talked to anyone else about this? Or you let them know, I've also talked to XYZ person about it because of the serial communication issue. So I have another question, Sarah Bess. The agenda item says open meeting law review and response, and so I appreciate you reviewing this information from the Attorney General's office. I thought it was also going to include a response about the committee's recent potential open meeting law violations. My understanding of OML is that a committee violates open meeting law even if a communication from one person was the trigger. The violation, it happens to the whole committee, and if if an OML violation, like report, whatever it's called, is filed, it's filed against the whole committee, not an individual. So we're all culpable when one person makes a communication that potentially violates open meeting law. So we've had two examples in recent months of emails that have gone out to the whole committee that included opinions from the sender about a topic that the committee had jurisdiction over. I've had a few conversations with the previous regional school committee chair and with our school committee's attorney, Mark Terry, who had said that typically, when no, I can't remember the name, what it's called, when no violation report has been filed, but when a committee realizes it may have violated open meeting law, the recommended remedy is to read the email in public, thus turning a private communication into a public matter. So I kind of thought that's what we were going to do tonight. If we're not going to do it tonight, perhaps we can do it at a future meeting, just to open it up.
No, that's fine. Let me, 1 minute, and I will.
One of them was published in a newspaper.
Okay, great, but not everyone, not everyone has
Well,
that's been made public, but still, we're a public body. This is a public meeting, so not everyone reads the paper or that paper.
apologize, I meant to bring them up before.
Are these past OML complaints, or are they,
Complaint.
They were not complaints, they were violations that we recognized.
but was the violation officially called a violation?
So, as Jennifer mentioned, best practices is fairly irrelevant if a complaint has been made against the committee. So, best practices is for the committee to say, wait a second, we have made a mistake, this is how we fix it, whether the complaint has been filed or not.
That's,
So,
yeah, right.
then we have,
Right, but I just want to make sure we're talking about a complaint and not a formally filed OML. In other words, it hasn't been formally filed, but it's a complaint that came from where?
there is no complaint.
All right,
We have recognized that we have made a mistake.
all right.
And in
that's
order
just-
to remedy our mistake,
All right.
this is how we do it.
So we're saying to the public, hey, we made a possible OML mistake, and we are going to remedy that before it even gets to that level of a formal complaint.
Exactly.
That makes sense. That's admirable.
Yep.
I agree.
You know, part of our goal of, you know, community involvement and rebuilding trust, I think, is to say, oh dear, I made a mistake, admit your mistake, figure out how to make it right, and do the make it right part. So this is our do the make it right part. So the first, we had two. So the first one went from Anna to Ben, which is, as Anna has already stated, was a mistaken reply all. So Ben, I would request an agenda item relating to the superintendent. I realize that we are waiting on the Title IX and other investigations report, but have given the accusations, I would like to consider putting the superintendent on some kind of probation and to ensure that we can monitor his responsiveness to complaints of bullying and bias of any kind. This is different from administrative leave. I do not believe that removing the superintendent stirs up a whole new can of worms unless the Title IX and other investigation determines that the superintendent deserves to be fired or is completely excused. The accusations warrants further attention and no action at all. Completely ignoring any lack of action without consequence at all is untenable. I'm not sure if it is possible to discuss this in executive session. I also second Tom Fanning's request to put turf back on the table, given the likely increase of costs and extreme variance of turf costs in depending on which version you get. I'd like to suggest that we put all options back on the table and get a more accurate assessment of how much each will cost and what will be maintaining the fields and how much playing time would actually be affected. I'm not sure how much the school committee has to say in curriculum, but I'd like to see if there's a way to adjust the foreign language curriculum in the middle school, which is currently one semester and no way to learn a language. I'm not sure if the busing schedule is addressed, but I'm hoping that this year will not start at the same time as last year. I fully understand that you cannot get everything on the next meeting's agenda, but you asked for suggestions, Hannah.
And that was sent to every last one of us?
Not me.
It was sent to the regional school committee
Email group.
which includes the superintendent, I learned.
Yes.
Yeah, you sent it to everyone.
Actually, I think I need to
I
edit
accidentally
that.
replied all to the message that Ben sent that CC'd the regional school committee email group.
Okay. Oh, no, not that one.
Sorry.
It's really hard to realize that one email address then goes out to so many people.
I really thought I said reply and not reply all, but I clearly failed. So,
Well, this is, you know, us. It was
My
clearly,
bad, yeah.
it was clearly a mistake, and I don't think any, you know, there wasn't any ill intent.
did not
So
mean to
was there,
All right,
did anyone complain about that?
Hold on one moment.
Oh, yeah, all right.
it was mentioned. And then it was reported in the newspaper. is much older.
Yes.
Not much, but older.
I apologize.
Was that also sent by you? The other email, was it sent by you?
No.
Given the hour, can we put this one off until the next meeting when you have it all in hand?
Yes, that is fine.
Thank you.
I will read. Do you have it? Do you know what date it was?
July 14th, I think. We're behind schedule, but we're not that far behind schedule.
Oh, yes, That makes me feel a lot better.
Oh, good.
I think this is it.
Was it this one?
The subject is superintendent's return. I can't seem to find it either.
All right,
But
It
the
is
subject
July
is
14th,
I
and
think
it's
I found
superintendent's
it.
return, and it's, I
Yep.
have it. You have it?
Yeah, I found it. Right. So our, good afternoon. Over the past 2 days, I've received a significant number of emails regarding the return to work of Dr. Mike Morris. Some of these have been positive and supportive. Others have called for Mike to be placed on administrative leave and that we do so via emergency meeting. Many of these emails and inquiries have been based on or have contained inaccurate information. At any rate, I want to clarify a few things and then look at next steps. First and foremost, there has been some confusion around whether Mike Morris is the target of ongoing Title IX investigations. He has not been the target of that investigation. He will, at some point in the next few weeks, discuss other matters with the investigator who is handling the Title IX investigations. He has not been directly cited as the target of the investigation. Secondly, there have been misconception that Doreen Cunningham has been placed on administrative leave by the school committee. She was not. The acting superintendent, Doug Slaughter, placed her on administrative leave. She is also not a direct target of the Title IX investigation. I have inquired on behalf of the school committee into the timeline of events leading up to the Title IX investigation and any related inquiries that have arisen throughout the course of the initial investigation. The specific information requested was 1, did Doreen Cunningham know and when did she know? 2, what steps were taken after reports of wrongdoing went to HR? And 3, what did Mike know and when did he know? Today, I spoke with Ed Mitnick, Mark Terry, about the status of the investigation as well as the status of queries. I learned that the investigation is indeed in its final stages and the last few interviews can be conducted in the coming weeks, with the Title IX investigation being a priority to first complete. Mike Morris will be interviewed sometime during the last week of that month. That being said, it is my opinion that placing Dr. Morris on administrative leave would not be the most appropriate way to act right now, nor would it be the best course of action for the district as a whole. I recognize that there is significant pressure to do so. It is my opinion, does not constitute the opinion or the direction of this body. I will not be available next week, but if the committee decides it would like to discuss this matter, I support the vice chair in posting a meeting as soon as possible. I have full faith in the competence of the vice chair's ability to facilitate such a meeting and will support that to whatever end I can. I want to be clear that simply posting a meeting and conducting a meeting in executive session to discuss placing the superintendent on administrative leave would send a message publicly that we may not support his return, regardless of the outcome of that decision. And there could be potentially negative repercussions as well. I am not saying this to say it's a conversation one way or another, but rather than to assure that I have informed this body of the possibility that our actions could cause further turmoil in the district and disrupt operations for some time. That may be necessary, and it almost may be foolish of us to do so. In conclusion, I am not asking if folks feel that, as with the noted risks, regional school committee should meet in executive session to discuss the possibility of putting superintendent on administrative leave. Thank you. Okay. Oh dear. Yep.
Oh, thank you for doing that. Just because I've done some research on OML violations, part of the remedy is what you just did, but also to attach the emails to the public agenda, so if you could just attach the emails to the public-facing agenda, whatever, website. So if you could do that after, that would be great.
Thank you for your research.
Can I ask why we feel those are, I get Anna's why, because she hit reply all, why was his a violation or a possible violation.
Because he sent it to the whole school committee.
Because he also, so the chair also can't send it out to the whole.
Contained opinions.
Okay, so if the chair has their own opinion in it, it shouldn't be sent out. To the
in-
whole
In this
committee.
case, the chair's obligation are no different from an individual member.
Okay, thank you.
And not in this case, but in all cases, the chairs doesn't have any other rules that define their obligations.
I think other committees need to do the same thing you're doing tonight.
Okay. So, next, we are moving on to the superintendent goals and discussion.
You want me to introduce this? So, well, I hope to get these to you a little earlier than, I think it was 4:30 today when I sent them to you individually and posted on the meeting. I mean, these are draft. This is the sort of first attempt at sort of crafting some goals for the coming year, as per my contract for one thing, but also just as a part of the evaluation process that is defined by the state. And you as school committee oversee my work and therefore are compelled to do an evaluation that meets and comports with that format that the state has. So this is a sort of first draft of a couple of goals, and what I would say is that, you know, I appreciate any and all feedback you have about this, and again, this is one of those where if you write to me individually, it's not an open meeting law violation, but if you reply to everybody, it is. But I do think collecting your thoughts about, you know, about these goals, other goals you might want me to have, and you know, wordsmithing the rest of this is, you know, things you want to be thinking about. I think traditionally we've set the superintendent's goals by kind of mid-October-ish, end of October-ish. So I think we will want to sort of get that feedback from everybody and get those in place in the next, you know, few weeks. But nonetheless, I think this is a starting point for you guys to think about and provide some feedback to me about what you think the goals should be, and then to promote the conversation amongst yourselves about what those goals should be.
Anna?
Two things. One, there's no dates in here, and so, in my previous private sector experience, goals always have dates attached to them, or some goals have a date attached to them so that you have a timeline. I will accomplish this by this time. And the second one is there's no goal related to academic performance, and I was just wondering if you wanted to add something that had just like a little bit of, I don't know exactly what you can be responsible for, but if you want to think about some kind of performance-related goal. I'm not saying you have to, I'm just saying maybe.
Tillman?
Yeah, I want to second that it feels like there should be something about learning, even if it's at the most general level, what you can control. We said earlier that, you know, one of the important things that the schools provide is a place for the students to come to learn, and certainly goals 1 and 2 are very important in terms of providing an environment where students can learn as well as providing financial stability. But it just feels that there should be something about the actual learning.
William?
I just want to say thank you for making LGBTQIA+ such a large part of your goals for the year. I really appreciate that, and I think that's very powerful statement that you're making to the community. And I also would say I do think that we need to have, as you have said, something else on there about, you know, where we're moving the kids and where's that accountability at. But I also would say that they have to feel safe before any learning can happen. And right now, I don't think feeling safe or that is in question. And so I really appreciate this, so thank you.
Jennifer?
So the items in goal number 1, I think come from the LGBTQIA support plans that we've been discussing. And so have some of them or many of them been accomplished already? If so, yay. But do we want to add to them for for the year to come, or are some of these going to be ongoing or for the year to come? So that's one piece of input. When I think back to the previous superintendent's goals from last year, I'll have to go back and look them up, but the one thing that I remember about that document is it included moving sixth grade to the middle school. And my recollection of what the regional school committee decided last year was that it would happen either in the 24-25 academic year or 25-26, so obviously not this year. So, is that still on the table? Should this body talk about whether we still want to consider trying to do that for the 24-25 year, or should we consider delaying it for the permanent superintendent, or just like what is the status of that? So this is maybe related to your goals if Doug and the committee thinks that maybe we should still do it in the 24-25 academic year, or so I don't know, it's sort of future agenda planning, sort of Doug's goals, just something for us to think about.
So if you don't mind, so there are some things that have been started here in this list. I think a number of them are in process. So it's one thing to, sort of, it says establishing, grade 7 to 12 student advisory group. That's the last one in the bulk. It's like, yeah, I had a conversation literally today about that and composition and sort of thing. But, I see the word establishing as being an ongoing sort of process, especially in an inaugural year. So I think there's a lot of them that have sort of, even if, sort of the mechanics of certain things are in place, it's like, all right, let's review and make sure that works. So that's part and parcel when I come back to you throughout the year and bring, so when we get near the end, I put together an artifacts document, which is going to have things that, maybe I've done or staff have done, and we bring that all together in a big, massive pile of electronic media for you. You'll see that sort of iteration process if necessary to sort of demonstrate that it happened and happened again. And so it wasn't like, I mean, I don't think there was anything, I tried to sort of pull out the things that were so like, check, because it needs to be and should be sort of this, there are tangible outcomes that we absolutely want to see and evidence of that in the course of the year, but it's also, most of these are things that we want to sort of put in place and then revisit and enhance and review and build from. But nonetheless, take that under advisement. I think on the second point, which was about sixth grade to the middle school, I'll be cautious in my reply. I think the short answer is the financials of that are going to be really extraordinarily difficult, I think, for 24-25. Given what we learned about the structure of how we would need to do that within the constructs that we have now. So given that we have a regional agreement that's grade 7 to 12, if we bring sixth grade in to the middle school there, they are and would need to be reported as an independent school, part of the Amherst School District. And so there's certain overhead and structures that you have to have in place, like a principal and, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, where some of the efficiencies that you think of with, staff overlapping and stuff, you lose some of those. And so that was some of the complications that kind of put the brakes on it before. I mean, I'm oversimplifying here, so I don't mean to, but but I will say this, I think a rich conversation about it, I think it would be a little difficult to do for 24-25, but thinking about it for subsequent years, and it's going to happen when Amherst actually opens, the new elementary school, because it's a K-5 school. But I think the other thing that goes hand in hand with that, and so this is for all of you to take back to the town governments, is the conversation around the regional agreement and whether we need to make changes and alterations to that. As my predecessor indicated at points during the previous year, the state has taken a more generous approach to regional agreements and being able to do a sort of narrow adjustments to that. So there might be a way to do that without having to unpack the entirety of the document, which is a really onerous project, which is why ours hasn't really been touched and updated in like forever, and has some things that are, well, I'll say arcane. But nonetheless, I mean, I think there are ways that we potentially, in cooperation with the state, could do a more targeted type of thing. But that's formally got to come from the member towns. So I want to sort of plant that seed to kind of think about that process and ask those questions and start that process. Because I think it's going to be, to my mind, pretty critical in having, sort of best outcomes for a sixth grade to middle school.
Just
Anna?
technical question about that. If they change the regional document, does that mean all towns have to join in sending sixth graders, or can you reframe the document in a way that only moves and I think the idea is Pelham is joining Amherst in this, they would know. So far, it's just Amherst who's been like, yes, we want to do this. So the other 3 towns have been a little bit hesitant about moving their sixth graders into the middle school, and if 1 or 2 or 3 of the towns decide that they absolutely will not accept that, you can still find a way to create a regional system that includes Amherst sixth graders?
I believe so, yes.
So I will say,
To give an overly short answer, yes, I think so.
All right.
so
It's not easy, but it can be done.
at the regional level, when we voted last year, 2 years ago, our vote at the region was to allow any member town that chose to do so to send for their sixth graders to be part of that. So there was no finalization of like, all of the towns have to do it, or none of the towns, or only these 2 towns. At the region, we voted to allow any of the 4 towns to let that happen.
All right,
Irv?
so, we at one of the meetings, meaning the school committee, said that we took a vote to vote that we will put off the decision of moving the 6th grade to the 7th grade. And we would make that decision at a future date. And exactly for the reasons that Doug was saying. That's why we made the decision to put off the decision. So it's up to us to, when we bring it back on to a future meeting agenda, but we certainly put it off. And Doug was right on in terms of the reasons why we put it off, because there are some onerous kinds of consequences that we had not taken into consideration before.
Yep,
Thank you,
Doug?
sir. So just speaking of goals, so obviously take that feedback. I'll sort of think about that and work with staff to think about what we can frame that seems aligned with what we're doing and what we can do and what we want to do, and I'll put that into the mix and sort of send that to you guys. But I think to this question of like, sixth grade move, that could be a goal. I mean, I think it's, it's sort of up to you guys as a committee if you want to add that or not add that, and I think that's part of the conversation we continue to have. Or it doesn't have to be a goal, but it can still be a direction to me of things we want to look at and what kinds of questions we want to ask. So it can be, if it becomes a goal, then it becomes part of the evaluation. So you're sort of expressly trying to delineate, sort of what parts of the standards that apply and how well it sort of holds me to a higher standard to respond to that goal. But at the same time, it can certainly be just action from the group to make note of that and mention and bring that up for you guys.
I just want to be clear in terms of the 6th to 7th grade, because this is really important, because parents and decision-making, it's us right now who needs to make that decision. We have to put that on the agenda. It's not up to Doug to say that, it's up to us.
Jennifer?
According to my recollection of that meeting, that we voted to delay moving sixth graders to the middle school, we said that we voted to delay moving them to either fall of '25 or fall of '26, and that we would make that decision no later than November 2024. So about around a year from now. So we can make it now, but according to that vote that we took, that anyway. So I want to suggest that we add to Doug's goals to start the process to find out what it would take to modify the regional agreement to allow sixth graders to be enrolled in the Amherst Regional Middle School. Because that's gonna, like, as Doug said, come the fall of '26, which is when the new Amherst Elementary School building will open, it's gonna have to happen by then. It might be a 3-year process to modify the regional agreement, so I'd like to see, I think we should discuss, and maybe Doug can look into it a little bit, adding that to his goals, is to look into the process to modify the regional agreement.
Yeah.
Tillman?
I agree, I just want to have a clarification, is that part of Doug's job, or is the regional agreement part of the school committee's job?
That's a great question.
I'm trying to make your life easier.
No, I appreciate that. That's a good question. I'll have to look at I haven't taken that view to the standards, so I can look at it, there's things around governance and, efficiencies and, financial, stability, that sort of thing. So,
Well,
I
if
guess
it is
I-
your
I-
job, please do it.
yeah. Well, there's a limit on what I can do. I mean, certainly, but, so some of the sort of discovery process can certainly be part and parcel of what we as a district do, and can lay that out for you guys, and happy to do that.
Maybe
For
it
sure.
can at least be figuring out whose responsibility it is. We
Right.
can start there.
Right. No,
Yeah, I think that, before Doug goes off and does any of that stuff, we need to come back to the central issue of physical constraints, fiscal constraints, and administrative constraints in relationship to the move of the 6th grade to the 7th. Those were some onerous issues that the former superintendent put on the table, and we need to bring those back as soon as possible so they can be explored, so that we can even make a decision whether it is even feasible to consider doing this. We don't know that if we don't go back and deal with those issues that were brought forward. And we need to do that as soon as possible, so that parents and everyone in the future knows that, hey, it's not going to happen on 25, 26, or 27. It may not ever happen.
Then you don't have a school.
I need to
Jennifer?
repeat that it has to happen when the 2 school buildings are decommissioned and the new school building is launched. 6th graders will not be in our elementary schools anymore. So wherever they're gonna go,
Right.
they're not gonna be in the elementary school.
Right.
So we have we have time, hopefully. I mean,
We've got a
right
lot
now
of
we're
time.
saying we have time, but like, it's gonna be here before you.
Right, and I guess
Okay.
the reason that it needs to be on there is that we need to do it as soon as possible. You know as well as I do, our physical constraints that we have in terms of dealing with the buildings to make those buildings suitable for that kind of move. The financial constraints are substantial. And somehow that reality has to get there and say, all right, yeah, if we have to do that, where is the money coming from? Where in the capital plan, what is that going to be? As
So,
far as I'm concerned, I
Hold
don't
on.
know where it's coming
I
from.
think we're too far into that to continue having that conversation. We are talking about Doug's superintendent goals, which I think we have exhausted the 6th grade to the middle school
Yep, we do.
portion.
I was going to go back to goals, but
Yes.
so I would, this is my own personal, view that I have for my own child. But there seems to be a very huge COVID gap of learning. And so maybe one of the goals could be looking and identifying the achievement gap in the kids from COVID, and how are we rebuilding that hole and that lack of knowledge. For my daughter, for math, she's in pre-cal now. Algebra 1 was during COVID, and the lack of learning is huge. And so now I have someone coming to my house multiple times a week to try to build that gap, And I've never seen a math teacher or the district step in and say, wow, all the kids that had algebra during COVID really need to be taught that now, because they really haven't learned much, because they were watching videos while they were at school. It's not the teachers, but it's just the system was broken during that time. So have we looked as a district, where the holes could be in some of the kids' learnings, and then make sure that we're getting them to where they need to be?
Maybe that can be.
As a goal, just as an achievement goal, kind of looking at the holes that COVID placed in the learning and how have we bridged that achievement for the kids?
Maybe that can be folded into an academic goal.
Correct, that's what I was, yeah, that's what I was trying to say, like an academic goal, but with the lens of the deficit that the kids have faced in the district because of COVID.
Okay. Anything else? All right. So, as we need to reorganize our subcommittees, because have not done it in a long time, and we just formed our newest subcommittee. So, can you put that?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I don't think I attached it, but it's on board docs.
Right. I want to say.
Yep, there's like the last one, subcommittees,
Oh,
if you open that, I think it's like a full list.
right.
Is it the second one down?
So this budget is, I
Full
think this
list.
whole list is,
No. So if you click on the full list of subcommittees, the next item,
oh,
then click on that guy,
that one.
and then you get this guy. All right,
Right.
so,
Print that, or just do we need the, oh, the,
no.
the titles of all the different.
Yeah,
Okay.
so it has the standing committees, a short description of what there are, the usual time commitment, and the average number of school committee representatives. So for example, the policy subcommittee reviews and revises existing policies and drafts new policies as needed for consideration and approval by the full regional committee. There is one monthly meeting for 1 hour, which includes 3 school committee members, and Debbie Westmoreland serves as the superintendent's designee. So last year, it was Jennifer, myself, Stephen Sullivan, and Peter Demling, but half of us have left. So as I thought I'm happy to go through and read them all, or, anyone has big feelings about which ones they would like to participate in. Yes, Jennifer?
I appreciate the situation that we're in, but also we're down 3 members. And I don't know if we want to populate all the subcommittees with us six. I also acknowledge that the 3 incoming future, still unknown Amherst members are only going to be seated in their vacancy until the end of the year, so that's equally awkward. But I don't know what the solution is. I just wanted to name that
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I thought about that too, but there are a couple that with the people who are no longer on the committee means that they don't have any committee representation. So, for example, the CPAC liaison, which meets with the Special Ed Parent Advisory Council as a liaison between the school committee and CPAC. So we don't have anybody who's filling that role right now. So that was more my concern, rather than the 6 of us take on all of the things forever.
So maybe we can identify the ones that really need to be filled.
Yeah, so it is the CPAC liaison, the collaborative representative, the clerical merit awards.
Wait a minute, Collab CES?
Yeah.
Collaborative representative.
Have I been removed from that?
So I have what was listed on there. Were you there for the region, or were you there for Amherst?
I don't know. I'd asked that question before, but I have been attending the meetings.
I confirm that.
Well,
Yes,
I can write your name down here now, and then you just won that prize.
Well, I mean, I had always thought that, I didn't know who I was, whether I was representing the region or Amherst. And at one time I asked that question and I can't remember the answer. However, I have been going to those meetings, and I've been on, and I even reported a couple of times. Anyway,
Okay.
yes.
Tillman?
So I'm going to stay because I've already committed to be at their next meeting.
I just want to offer that for Leverett, I'm going to the same collaborative meeting, and I have to go for Leverett. If you wanted to save some time, we could maybe explore if we could have some efficiency by me representing both the
Wouldn't-
retail school committee and Leverett, and you,
That's right, because the Leverett guy was the chair.
the previous Leverett guy.
Yes,
Okay,
that's true.
There's many Leverett guys.
so, Tillman, would you like to?
Tillman.
I don't want to take anything away from Irv.
Tillman, believe me, I would love for you
I mean,
to
you
take
can-
over that.
I'll go.
And,
I'm happy
and
to
you
do
can,
that.
you know, and give my, and what I'll do is, I am going to, you're going to the next, have you already committed to go to the next meeting?
Okay, I think that's probably something you guys can,
The only thing I want to point out is that we should check they're very careful with quorum, and we have to see if I can count as 2 people then, or if that causes problems with the quorum. So let us find
Why
out.
don't you go to the next meeting and give my apologies. I'll
We'll find out.
strike my
beforehand,
meal
but yeah.
down. I'll do that on my next,
Okay.
tomorrow, in fact.
okay, so the next is the, so going through the CPAC liaison, clerical merit award selection, contact negotiating for the APAA. And that is it, that has nobody right now. Yep,
So,
Jennifer?
before the end of the last school year, Debbie asked me to be on the clerical award, merit award thing, and I think because she asked me to, and I said I would, so you can
Great.
put me down for that again. And then the APAA negotiating committee, like, did we just signed a contract with APAA, so
Yes.
But do we still need?
So I felt like we should at least have someone, should something come up, that there's a school committee representative to go to, even though that contract doesn't negotiate again until the 24-25 school year.
Well,
If,
what's
Anna?
going on here?
if we need a new assistant principal, does that fall under this contract, or do we have to renegotiate with them? So then we would need somebody on that.
No, so it's the union, so the new person would join the union. The school committee just negotiates with the union, not how they pick their membership.
Okay.
William? Oh,
If I may,
yes,
the representation on this one would be if there was an issue that needed to be, that might need a memorandum of agreement between the union and the district, a school committee member would be serving a liaison role in that conversation and then bringing it back to the full committee for vote at that point. Is there any anticipated need? Probably not, but there are times when things come up in the duration of a contract that need some attention, so.
That was more my thinking. Is there anyone who would like to be that person?
Temporary.
Yep.
I can do it temporarily.
Okay.
I think we should definitely revisit the subcommittee assignments, in January.
No, well,
We can
When
definitely,
the full Amherst committee is assigned.
we can definitely reevaluate when there are, all of our seats have been filled.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
Yes.
I was
William?
just gonna say on the SCPAC, I have served on the parent side of that before in Brooklyn. So, and I have the bandwidth to come on one Friday per month, so if,
Sold.
Awesome.
I can put my name on that,
Thank
if
you.
that's okay with everyone.
Thank you. No, that's great. Thank you so much.
I think they also do those virtually. I think they do them virtually.
Okay, it's
which
even
makes
easier
it
then. So
easier to do. I
Okay.
mean,
I can do either, so.
Okay, well, that is fantastic. I appreciate everybody volunteering to help cover those absences, and I will tentatively pencil full recommittee reorganization for when
Can I
our
tell you
seats are
one
full.
other thing? Somebody contacted me, Mary Lou Conca, contacted me about having a and I don't, there's like some sort of restorative justice something meeting, and she had somebody from at least one of the school committees attending the meeting.
So,
Do we know who that was?
I
or-
have on this, which sounds like may not be the most up-to-date thing, but this is
Okay.
what I have to work from, that the School Equity Advisory Committee, which I think is the one that you are mentioning, has Irv as being the school committee representative there. But if,
And Irv is entirely surprised that he. I'm stunned. However, would you send me a memo
sure.
that Irv wrote you were on this committee and give me all the particulars because I have no idea what it is.
I think it had a different name.
Oh, okay.
Well, anyway, whatever you have, would you
Either
just
way,
send it to
I
me?
will forward you whatever I
Send-
can
send
find
it to
about
me?
it. Yes.
Can I sign up for that one?
William? Sure. Yep.
I feel like that is part of my mission, so.
That's great. No, I appreciate
should
it.
put myself there.
Then you can be me also on that.
Okay, yes.
So, am I taking your name off? It's,
Is
so,
that
on
something
here,
you
it
wanna
says
do?
the
There's only
average
one,
school
there's only two
committee.
people there now. It says Irv and Ben, currently.
So why don't you,
So I'm saying I
Yes.
will put myself forward.
Yes.
But I don't know if that relinquishes you. I don't know.
well, anyway, I'll stay on there, although I don't have any idea what it is.
I will reach out and see what I can find
Right.
out and
Right.
include both of you.
All
Okay.
right, good enough.
Did you ask? No. Okay. Okay. So I think that is the end of that. I will update the list as best I can moving forward. Oh no.
All right, yeah.
Okay. So
One more
our-
question.
yes, Anna.
Do we have policies that need to be adjusted or written imminently?
I don't think so, but
There was that one public comment policy that we were gonna revisit.
so I think that has already gone back and forth with the subcommittee. I think it's coming back to the full committee for a second read and possible
Right.
vote.
Okay.
I will double check and see where we are with that, and if it looks like it is something that needs to be revisited, I will bring it to the next meeting.
Okay.
And we can look at it then. Right, the warrant report.
All right, here we go. By the way, this is something that was assigned to me when we did reorganization at one point, and I would like to be reorganized out of this in the future. So, first one is, I, Irv Rhodes, authorized by my signatures payables in the amount of $903,548.73, of which other funds and gifts is $290.80. Revolving fund expenses of $1,478. This was on the 12th of September that I signed that. The other one is, oh yeah, go ahead, come on. Just give it, it's loading the document. I, Irv Rhodes, authorized by my signatures payables in the amount of $903,548.948. And that was signed on the 12th also of September. Next up. Third. Well, that's great. It just logged me out. I'm sorry about you, but it keeps telling me I can't get into the account anymore. There it goes. I, Irv Rhodes, authorized by signature, signature through the amount of $837,318.73, which was dated on 9/6/2023 and signed on 9/6/2023. And if this lets me be successful, I will do the last one. Iowa Roads, authorized by my signature to the scholarship warrant in the amount of $2,000 for a transfer request dated the 6th of September. And I signed this on the 6th of September.
I happen to have one also.
All right, go ahead.
Oh, okay.
I filled in when I was not available.
Oh, okay.
I, Jennifer, shall authorize by my signature payables in the amount of $53,984.63 for the warrant dated 8/22/23. This includes general fund expenses of $21,701.17, revolving fund expenses of $75, grant fund expenses of $32,208.46, and capital fund of $1,054.18, and I signed that on 8/28/23.
Thank you. So our next agenda item is accept gifts. Jennifer?
I'd like to read it, that's okay. But I just also want to mention, I happened to get an email from Todd Fruth today, who is the choral director at the high school, and he says that, so these gifts are I think, came through Todd. He says, I've been in conversation with a music professor at Amherst College. They've received a sizable donation earmarked to purchase new pianos, so they are looking to remove their current stock. Both the middle school and high school would love to receive one piano apiece. And so he wanted to make sure that this was going to be approved, which it is. So I will go to it and read it. So I thought that was a really nice thing to hear from Amherst College. I move that the Regional School Committee accept from Amherst College to support high school and middle school music department 2 Steinway Model B grand pianos, approximately 50 years old, estimated at $15,000 per piano, for an estimated total of $30,000, and from Amherst Education Foundation number 1698 to support Bridge to Resilient Youth in Transition BRIT gardening project at the high school, $3,677, and from Amherst Education Foundation number 1698 combating sexual harassment at the middle school, $4,450 for a total of $8,127.
Tillman?
Question, did we not already approve those on 8/23?
I don't recall.
I don't recall.
It might be dated 8/23, which might have been
Yeah,
after our last
but
meeting.
it is on the meeting agenda for 8/23. Double check. I do remember the pianos and the other ones. So it was item 2H, supposedly at 8 p.m., but probably later.
Can we see
What are you
the, can we
saying?
see the minutes from that meeting? It should be in the minutes.
I don't know where I can find them in there, sorry.
So
Inadvertently reattached.
I'm gonna say I will second this, and I say we approve them just for
Double is better.
double making sure everything is good.
All right.
So all in favor? All opposed? Fantastic. All right. So our next item is the Regional School Committee will now consider entering executive session pursuant to GLC 30A, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigation position of the public body, and the chair so declares, and I declare, with no intention of returning to open session. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Give you a roll call vote.
We have to do, okay. Let me go back. Jennifer,
Yes.
Irv,
I have no idea this was about, so yes, we'll just
thank you.
be a ghost kind of thing, I guess.
Anna,
Aye.
Tillman,
Aye.
William,
Aye.
and Sarah Bess. Aye. Right, so we are finishing here, and we will now move into executive session.
And that means physically moving. I have never been in
Oh,
an
yeah.
in-person meeting looking at executive session.
Yes, so
Is there-
we will pack up in here and relocate to another room.
It's a stretch a little.
I'm a little confused. Did we get anything that said why we were going into executive session? I just voted to go into
Well,
executive
the
session.
microphones are still live.
I know,
it's
so I
okay.
don't know why. I thought
the
we would be informed of that.
It's right there.
What's it say?
Unfair labor practice charge against